Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Grace Holland. Grace Holland was born on September 23, 1984, in the small town of Creve Coeur, Missouri. She grew up in a close-knit family with her parents and two sisters, including her twin, Laura. Together, they explored the world, played, studied, and dreamed of the future. Grace's education at a Catholic school instilled in her a sense of discipline, and her degree in criminal justice further fueled her interest in law and order. From a young age, Grace was a purposeful and responsible individual. She was drawn to the idea of helping others and upholding the law. After graduating from university, Grace got married and had 4 children, who became the center of her life. She devoted herself to caring for them, teaching them new things, and sharing her love for the world. As a proud mother, Grace often shared photos of her children with those around her and cherished every moment spent with them. However, in 2015, Grace's life took a dramatic turn. She met Robert Diaz, the head of the Maryland County Fire Department. His courageous profession and heroic image immediately caught her attention. Robert and Grace were swept up in a whirlwind of emotions. He was captivated by her beauty, intelligence, and kindness, while she admired his strength, determination, and passion for helping others. However, a dark secret lurked behind Robert's impeccable reputation. His brother, David, a former St. Louis police officer, had been charged with a serious crime in 1998. Nearly 2 decades later, David passed away, leaving behind unanswered questions and secrets. David's influence had a profound impact on Robert's life and career. As a respected police officer, David had opened doors for Robert in law enforcement, helping him advance in his career. Robert also served in a fire department and held the position of deputy president at the family company, Liberty Arts Works. The company specialized in creating memorials for fallen military personnel, firefighters, and police officers. Through his work and involvement with the Backstopper organization, which supported first responders, Robert forged strong connections in his professional network. Robert had a child from his first marriage, but the relationship ultimately ended in divorce. He then married Grace, a detective from the Maryland Police, in an effort to find happiness again. This union strengthened his ties to law enforcement, and he and Grace built a life together, buying a new home and starting fresh. However, their seemingly perfect relationship soon began to unravel, revealing underlying issues. Robert's past continued to haunt him. His brother had been accused of a crime, tarnishing Robert's reputation and casting doubt on his integrity. Furthermore, cracks began to appear in his relationship with Grace. Despite their outward success, their relationship was marked by turmoil, with periods of calm punctuated by intense arguments. According to Laura, Grace's twin sister, Robert exerted significant control over Grace's life, dictating her spending habits, social interactions, and even her relationships. Laura revealed that Grace's best friend ended their relationship after a dinner with Robert, but the reason for the breakup was unclear. This development only increased Grace's feelings of isolation from her loved ones. Grace claimed that Robert forced her to quit her job and join the family business, although there was no official record of her employment. The family alleged that Robert simply instructed the company to pay her without documenting it. During this challenging time, Grace discovered she was pregnant with Robert's child. However, instead of bringing them closer together, the pregnancy increased the tension in their relationship. Their text messages, presented at the trial, revealed their conflicting desires. Grace wanted to keep the child and repair their relationship, while Robert was ready to end things. Court documents provided by the Holland family were shocking. Robert offered to pay Grace $1,600 to have an abortion, wanting to get rid of the child. However, an unexpected event occurred in the summer of 2020 in Missouri, the tragic death of 35-year-old Grace Holland. The suspicious circumstances surrounding Grace's death have left her family and the people of St. Louis determined to investigate further. As the government remained silent, distrust of the official story grew. Grace's mother faces accusations, which only strengthens the family's resolve to uncover the truth. The investigation started slowly at first, but after a lawsuit was filed and evidence was found, the case gained momentum, crossing state lines and captivating the entire country. Public opinion demands a fair verdict. On October 29, 2021, Laura Holland, Grace's sister, posted a heartbreaking letter on the police department's Facebook page. In it, she revealed that Grace had been living in fear of her husband Robert's aggressive behavior and had sought help from the Maryland Fire Department on June 24, 2020. Grace had secretly recorded one of their arguments, which later became evidence of their abusive relationship. On the recording, Robert can be heard insulting Grace, saying he didn't want to be with her. Robert was furious with Grace, accusing her of being lazy while he worked hard. In an attempt to calm him down, Grace confessed her love for him, but this only made Robert angrier. He eventually left her, leaving Grace alone with feelings of bitter loneliness and deep emotional pain. However, the situation seemed to have taken a turn for the better by July 21st. At around 10 p.m., Robert and Grace took a photo together, lying on their bed in their new home. Both of them were smiling, and it seemed like they were trying to put their argument behind them. But this moment of peace was short-lived. 2 days later, on July 23, 2020, at 11:53 p.m., Robert called the emergency services, sobbing uncontrollably as he reported that his fiancée had shot herself. Paramedics rushed into the house to find Grace lifeless on the floor. The cause of her death was determined to be a gunshot wound to the head, resulting in instant death. However, the results of the autopsy, released on September 17, 2020, revealed a surprising level of detail. According to the report, the bullet that killed Grace was fired from a gun she was holding in her right hand. The bullet pierced her left temple, deviated from the center line to the right, and lodged in the occipital lobe of her skull. The unusual trajectory of the bullet raised questions among experts about the official story. The Holland family stated that the detective spoke briefly with Robert at the crime scene. Robert reportedly told the police that Grace was struggling with depression following a recent miscarriage, their second. He claimed that he was in the living room when Grace emerged from the bedroom to hug him, but soon returned to the bedroom. He said he heard a shot and found Grace in the bedroom with a gun and blood under her head. The detective submitted a report to the medical examiner at 7:25 a.m. However, the Holland family disputed this, claiming that Robert visited the police station with his lawyer on the same day. Robert gave a written statement that contradicted the report. In his new version of events, Robert stated that he and Grace were in the bedroom together before she left for work. According to Robert, Grace returned to hug him, brought her face close to his, said goodbye, and then a shot occurred. A published press release on January 31, 2024, raised questions about a missing recording of an interview between Robert and a detective from the police department during the investigation. Jeffrey Hartman, the police chief, confirmed the existence of the video interview to a TV channel in 2021. Hartman reported that an error in the department's recording system led to the deletion of the record, leaving many questions unanswered. The police investigated Grace's death on August 4, 2020, and suggested she had been depressed, implying her death was expected. Analyzing Robert's phone data, detectives concluded it was a suicide based on forensic results. However, the Holland family doubted the police's findings and hired a private detective, believing Robert was responsible for her death. Laura, Grace's sister, shared her concerns about the investigation online, detailing the evidence and facts that suggested the police had gotten it wrong. The Holland family expressed their disappointment and frustration with the police, who had never considered Robert a suspect despite the numerous clues pointing to his involvement. The family also criticized the investigators for not conducting thorough tests, such as checking Robert's and Grace's hands for gunpowder residue and examining Robert's clothes for evidence. Furthermore, the police department had lost several crucial videos that could have shed light on Robert's role in the incident. The Holland family expressed concerns about potential police bias against Robert, citing his unusual behavior after Grace's death. Robert showed no concern for Grace's well-being. The family also pointed out that Robert knew some people involved in the investigation, which they believed may have influenced the case. The family claimed that obvious signs of domestic violence were ignored. After their requests for a more thorough investigation were met with no response, the Hollands took their case to court in 2023. They filed a lawsuit against Robert, accusing him of physical abuse and suggesting that he was either directly responsible for Grace's death. Robert's lawyer maintained his client's innocence, acknowledging some facts but denying any involvement in Grace's death. He suggested that the family's emotional distress may have led them to misinterpret events and wrongly accuse Robert. In December 2023, Hartman of the police department requested that the St. Louis County Police Department review the case of Grace. The county police department agreed to review the case and began examining the details in January 2024. During this time, police officers visited the home of Robert to provide medical assistance to his new girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Sweeney. The incident is being treated as a sudden death, but the exact cause is still under investigation. Detectives are waiting for the results of a toxicology report, which may take 4 to 6 weeks to complete. Dr. Sweeney had previously spoken about her struggles with serious illnesses, including bone disease and allergies, for which she was hospitalized in 2021. Her condition could have led to severe allergic reactions, including life-threatening anaphylactic shock, if left untreated. However, her family reported that she always carried an adrenaline shot to manage her allergies and kept her condition under control. They are choosing to wait for the official autopsy results before drawing any conclusions. Robert remains a suspect in the eyes of the law, despite not being charged in connection with the deaths of Holland and Sweeney. The outcome of the Sweeney autopsy may significantly impact the investigation into Grace Holland's death. Following a thorough re-examination, the St. Louis County Police have ruled out the possibility that Grace took her own life. The investigation's findings were submitted to the prosecutor's office in early December, and the case is currently being treated as a death by negligence. The case remains open, and the prosecutor's office may take further action once all the facts are known. Police Chief Jeffrey Hartman has reaffirmed the department's initial conclusion, despite growing doubts and public scrutiny. Meanwhile, the families of Holland and Sweeney continue to push for the release of autopsy and toxicology results, seeking clarity on whether Grace Holland's death was a tragic accident or if there are underlying circumstances that have yet to be uncovered. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case. The case Fusako Sano. The victim, Fusako Sano, who later changed her name to Sachiko Yamada, was born on November 28, 1980 in Mitsuke, a small town in Niigata Prefecture, Japan. She grew up in an ordinary family with average income and was both loved immensely. Attending one of the local schools, she enjoyed baseball and rooted passionately for the local team. On November 13, 1990, just 2 weeks shy of her 10th birthday, Fusako, a 4th grade student at the time, was returning home from school. She was running a little late because she had stayed behind to watch a school baseball game. Her parents were aware of the sporting event, so they weren't particularly worried when their daughter walked home on her usual route. It was already getting dark on a cold autumn evening. There were almost no passers-by on the street, and cars passed quickly, disappearing from sight. Suddenly, one car overtook the girl, then braked sharply and swerved in front of her. The loud squeal of brakes marked a sudden change in the young girl's life. Nobuyuki Sato was born on July 15, 1962, in the Japanese prefecture of Nagata into a wealthy family. The head of the family owned a successful business related to passenger transportation. Nobuyuki was a late child. His father was 62 years old at the time of his birth, and his mother was 37. Nobuyuki had 5 siblings from his father's previous marriage, but had no ties to them. He grew up capricious and very spoiled, with no inhibitions. He was also very emotional, and sometimes even aggressive. If his demands were not met immediately, he could throw a tantrum. Once he even threw himself at his mother, with fists right in a store, when she did not buy him another toy. At school, Nobuyuki had almost no friends because of his complex character and strange behavior. He was quite tall and felt embarrassed about it, often slouching. This led to many offensive nicknames from other children. On one of the central streets of the city, his family built a luxurious 2-story house in European style. The second floor mostly consisted of a spacious and bright children's room for Nobuyuki. However, he did not like this room. He behaved restlessly and kept repeating that he was afraid to be there alone. This anxious behavior and unreasonable fears prompted his parents to seek medical advice. After an initial examination at a regular hospital, Nobuyuki was referred to a psychiatrist for further evaluation. There he was, diagnosed with numerous disorders, including nyctophobia, fear of the dark, and misophobia, fear of germs and dirt. Additionally, the boy exhibited a peculiar mix of autophobia, fear of loneliness, and sociophobia, anxiety related to social interactions. Essentially, he was scared of both being alone and interacting with others. Nobuyuki consistently remained an outsider. Despite his striking appearance, he had neither a girlfriend nor friends throughout high school. He ultimately became an outcast. Peers simply avoided him. His frustration and dissatisfaction found release solely in interactions with his elderly parents, who always forgave him and attempted to placate him with gifts or money. As an adult, Sato struggled to maintain employment. He frequently encountered conflicts at work, neglected his responsibilities, and created tensions with colleagues. For example, he might leave work in the middle of the day just because rain made him feel down. On one occasion, he even caused injury to a female coworker in what seemed like an attempt to gain her attention. Although this incident was labeled an accident, it resulted in his immediate dismissal. Following this event, Sato ceased working altogether and relied on his parents for financial support. Over time, he ventured out less frequently and engaged in more frequent disputes with his parents. During one such altercation, Sato set fire to their house, nearly destroying it and endangering its occupants. This action led to his compulsory treatment at a psychiatric clinic. In the clinic, Sato was diagnosed with manic depressive disorder and outbursts of uncontrolled aggression. There were also signs of misogyny, a deep disdain for women. He remained hospitalized for just over a month before being discharged after being considered no longer a threat to others. Following his discharge, Nobuyuki maintained relative calmness for some time and even embarked on reconstructing the partly burned house while adding a few more rooms to it. His efforts didn't last long. He simply abandoned the construction. After the first attempt at kidnapping and subsequent arrest, Sato became increasingly unsociable and sullen. He spent most of his time in his watching TV. Over time, he stopped allowing his mother and father not only into his room, but also to the second floor of their home. If this boundary was violated, he would pounce on his elderly parents with fists, shouting and threatening them with death. In the spring of 1989, Nobuyuki began to go for walks. He preferred walking near one of the local schools, closely watching the girls. At first, he behaved with restraint. He didn't approach or try to make contact with anyone. But one day, he grabbed one of the girls right at the school gate, threw her over his shoulder, and ran to his car parked nearby. This all happened in front of other children who immediately shouted and called for help. A school security guard and a few bystanders reacted quickly. They rescued the girl and detained the kidnapper before the police arrived. The girl Sato tried to kidnap was barely 9 years old. He couldn't explain why he had attacked her, So the only logical conclusion was that Sato was charged with attempting to commit unlawful acts of violence against a minor. He faced a serious prison sentence, but at his trial in August that same year, Nobuyuki was given only a year's probation. According to reports, his father helped him by using connections and paying a significant amount of money. Soon after, Nobuyuki's name mysteriously disappeared from the criminal database, again due to his father's efforts. However, this zealous effort by his elderly father led him to suffer a heart attack and die. His father felt acute shame and pain for raising such a monster. A year and a half after the first failed kidnapping attempt in Nagata, 28-year-old Nobuyuki went on the hunt again. Throughout this period, he maintained a relatively calm demeanor, avoiding police attention. On November 13, 1990, Nobuyuki left home, got into his car, and drove around there for several hours. As evening settled and darkness began to fall, he navigated to a deserted road where he soon noticed a girl returning home from school. The girl was 9-year-old Fusako Sano, who had unfortunately been delayed at a sporting event that day. There were no people or cars nearby, no one to call for help. Nobuyuki abruptly stopped and swerved to the curb right in front of the girl. He exited the car with a knife in hand, grabbed Fusako, and threatened her, stating that if she screamed or attempted to flee, he would slit her throat. He then forced Fusako Sano into the trunk of his car. After driving down the road for a bit longer, he turned onto a vacant lot where he opened the trunk again. He tied the girl's hands and feet and taped her mouth shut. As night fell, Nobuyuki drove to his house. He carried Fusako through an unfinished part of his dwelling to remain undetected. Then he exited again and re-entered through the door as usual. Nobuyuki went upstairs and once more threatened her with the knife, instructing Fusako to be silent. He tied her to the bed and warned her that if she tried to leave the room, look out the window, scream, or cry, he would kill her and dispose of her body in the ocean so no one would ever find it. Terrified beyond belief, Fusako complied with everything her kidnapper demanded, still hoping for mercy and release. When Fusako did not return home from school at the expected time, her parents began worrying. They knew she stayed late after school sometimes to watch baseball games, but it was getting dark and she should have been home long ago. Initially, the Sono couple tried to locate their daughter by tracing her usual route from home to school. Unfortunately, their efforts were in vain. As night approached, they turned to the police, hoping for a swift resolution, since only a few hours had passed since she vanished. Police squads began the search promptly, and by morning, dozens of volunteers from the local community had joined the effort. The following day, over 200 individuals participated in the search operation. They combed through the area, pasted flyers bearing the missing girl's photo, and interviewed passers-by in hopes of finding random witnesses. Notably, Nobuyuki lived in close proximity to both the girl's school and the police station. Moreover, he had previously drawn police attention for an attempted kidnapping involving this very girl. However, he was not considered a suspect due to his late father's influence, which ensured Nobuyuki's name did not appear in any criminal databases. The extensive search went on for several months. Authorities and volunteers checked numerous empty buildings, structures, trailers, and railroad cars. They searched suspicious vehicles and vacant lots, and even monitored interstate highways. Despite these substantial efforts, no clues or traces of the schoolgirl's whereabouts were found. Various theories emerged, including one suggesting that North Korean special services might have been involved in her abduction. However, as time passed with no successful leads, Fusako Sano remained missing. Captured by a maniac, as Fusako herself later recounted, she was initially terrified and complied with her captor's demands in hopes that he might eventually show mercy and release her. Nobuyuki had no intention of letting her go. During the initial months of captivity, he bound Fusako's hands and feet so tightly that it impaired blood flow and caused some loss of sensation in her limbs. Any sign of disobedience or breaking silence resulted in severe punishment. He used a stun gun on her and physically assaulted her with fists or threats involving a knife. At the same time, Nobuyuki never once took advantage of his victim in an intimate way during her imprisonment. He did not regard her as a woman, but rather as something between a living toy and a pet. Talking to Nobuyuki was her only interaction. He sat and fed the prisoner once or twice daily with food prepared by his mother, who lived on the first floor. Due to this meager diet, the girl became weakened and severely malnourished. He forbade her from getting out of bed, requiring her to use plastic bags for bathroom needs. Once a month, he bathed Fusako in a basin, cut her hair and nails himself, and dressed her in his own shabby clothes. Despite this, even when she behaved quietly and followed all of his rules, he still beat her regularly for amusement. After several years, Fusako was finally broken psychologically. She complied with all the demands of her tormentor and did not attempt to run or look out the window. Nobuyuki stopped tying her up when he went somewhere else and didn't even lock the door of his room. He merely made the bed with the prisoner lying there and threw a couple of blankets or towels on top, so that at first glance, it looked like there was nothing underneath. As time went on, Nobuyuki began to turn on Fusako's radio periodically and allowed her to watch television with him. However, they only watched shows or sports matches that interested him. He also brought her comic books, which he adored. These were the only things Fusako read during her years of confinement. For almost 10 years, she had seen no other people apart from her captor and had never spoken to anyone else or left the confines of her room. In fact, she stayed on the bed all the time and hardly moved at all. The girl had become so resigned to her fate that she did not even try to resist escape or make herself known. Regarding Nobuyuki's mother, she lived on the first floor of the house and for years had not entered her son's room because he threatened to beat her if she broke this restriction. Being well aware of her spoiled and violent son's behavior, she adhered strictly to his rules after Nobuyuki put a prisoner in the room. He forbade the mother from even going up to the second floor, and when she once tried to do so, he simply pushed the elderly woman down the stairs. She tried to work as much as she could and stayed home as little as possible. However, when she retired in 1996 at the age of 73, her life became unbearable. Her son regularly abused her, beat her, and forced her to follow a series of rules he had invented. Eventually, the elderly woman could not endure it any longer. In the spring of 1996, she went to the police and wrote a statement declaring that she was a victim of domestic violence by her own son. Unfortunately, the police did not want to handle the case and persuaded Mrs. Sato to withdraw her statement and deal with the family issues independently. The pensioner sought help from a public health center twice, where she complained about her son's inadequate and aggressive behavior, asking for his hospitalization in a psychiatric facility. However, she was denied assistance each time because her reasons were considered not serious enough. They advised her instead to persuade her son to voluntarily seek help at a clinic. In January 2000, nearly 4 years later, and after another severe beating, the exhausted elderly woman called a hospital requesting immediate medical attention and law enforcement presence because her son had tied her up and tasered her multiple times. This unexpected discovery prompted officials to finally respond to her complaints and visit their home. When the ambulance and police arrived, Nobuyuki became visibly nervous and acted aggressively. He resisted arrest and attempted to fight back. Due to his inappropriate behavior, officers had to handcuff him while medics administered a large dose of sedatives. The battered elderly woman admitted that she was terrified of her son's increasingly aggressive and uncontrollable behavior. She also revealed that she had not been upstairs for many years because he had threatened to kill her if she did. The police decided to inspect the second floor and Nobuyuki's room. Once inside, they noticed a pile of blankets on the bed, which suddenly moved slightly. Pulling back the blankets revealed a very thin, pale, and exhausted girl underneath them. When questioned about who she was and how she ended up there, she quietly gave her name and said that she had been kidnapped on her way home from school. A long time ago, following the disturbing discovery, Nobuyuki's mother was brought into the room and asked if she recognized the girl. The woman appeared very surprised and insisted she had no idea that anyone than her and her son lived in their house. The captive also confirmed she had never seen the woman before. On the same day, Nobuyuki was taken to the station for questioning. His statements astonished the police officers. He meticulously recalled driving along the road when he saw Fusako. According to Nobuyuki, he found the girl very attractive and decided to take her home with him. He claimed to care for her, feeding, washing, dressing her, and reading comic books to her. He asserted that he only punished her for disobedience. Furthermore, he confessed that he loved his captive as a friend, believing she reciprocated these feelings. Nobuyuki expressed no intention of ever releasing her and hoped she would stay with him for life. He enjoyed spending time talking with her for hours about various topics such as skateboarding, soccer, music, or his favorite comic book characters. Despite this interaction, Fusako never attempted to escape. Nobuyuki concluded this meant she liked living with him. After a medical examination, doctors concluded that despite his mental disorder, Sato, Nobuyuki, was able to recognize his actions and could stand trial. His mother faced potential involvement as an accomplice because she regularly purchased feminine hygiene products at his request and possibly suspected something was amiss. However, it was considered that she repeatedly contacted police and medical institutions but received little response. The case garnered significant public attention even before the trial commenced, leading to strong criticism of city police. Notably, Nobuyuki had previously been prosecuted for attempting to kidnap a schoolgirl, but remained above suspicion when he carried out his plans successfully. Consequently, both the local police chief and head of the regional police department were removed from their posts due to their inability to control the situation effectively from the outset and their numerous mistakes. Nobuyuki Sato was brought to trial in May 2000. All his actions, even the smallest offenses, were meticulously scrutinized and added to the case. The prosecutors aimed to secure the maximum possible punishment for the kidnap. Consequently, Sato was found guilty and sentenced to 14 years in prison. This term was deemed the maximum at that time. He was released in the spring of 2015. By that time, his mother had long passed away in a nursing home, and Nobuyuki had no other relatives. He himself was found dead a year and a half later, in early 2017, in a small rented room. The cause of his death was not disclosed. As for the girl's life, at the time of her discovery, Fusako was so weak that she could barely stand on her feet. Doctors diagnosed her with exhaustion and dehydration. Her muscles were practically atrophied. Additionally, she stuttered, was frightened of sunlight, and had nearly lost her communication skills. When her parents saw their daughter for the first time, after nearly a decade apart, they didn't recognize her immediately. It took around a year for Fusako to recover physically to some extent, but her mental health took much longer to heal. Fusako Sano suffered severe post-traumatic stress disorder. She avoided people and intellectually remained at the level of a 9 or 10-year-old child. Her parents moved her out of town, where she changed her name to Sachiko Yamada and flatly refused to speak with the press. Over time, though, she made friends and took up photography. She even passed her driver's license test. However, in 2007, she faced another traumatic event when her father drowned before her eyes during a family trip to a river. On March 20, 2020, in the city of Aloa, Portugal, 20-year-old Diogo Gonçalves went to meet a girl he admired greatly. Unfortunately, he had no foresight on how this seemingly romantic evening would culminate. The picturesque resort town of Albufeira, noted as one of the premier destinations in the Algarve region of southern Portugal, was Dee's birthplace in 1999. As an only child in a modest yet industrious family whose livelihood hinged primarily on the fluctuations of tourism, Diogo was regarded by his parents as an exemplary son. Acquaintances described him as decent, responsible, hardworking, and reliable. Additionally, he was an outgoing young man who cherished the company of friends and family. Diogo pursued his high school education in his hometown and subsequently embarked on a computer science degree. To support his academic aspirations and contribute to household expenses, he began working at McDonald's at the age of 16 in 2015. By the time he was 17 and still employed with the renowned company, Diogo's life took an unforeseen and tragic turn. One day, his father suffered a stroke, which led to him being in a vegetative state. The media reported extensively on this event, compounding their troubles that same year, as Diogo and his mother were grappling with this new challenge. Another misfortune struck him hard. His mother, his unwavering supporter, was struck by a vehicle on her way to work at the mall where she was employed as a cleaner. She was dragged several meters by the car and fell into a ditch. Sadly, she succumbed to her severe injuries. Even though the driver fled the scene initially, law enforcement officials were able to identify and bring him to justice. While awaiting legal proceedings against those responsible for both his parents' dire situations, it became necessary for Diogo's father to be placed in a specialized medical facility for appropriate care. His maternal aunt, concerned about his precarious circumstances, invited him to stay with her. However, due to irreconcilable differences that emerged after weeks together, cohabitation proved unfeasible. Subsequently, confiding in a friend about these challenges led to an offer from his friend's parents. They provided him accommodation within their residence located in Aloes Algarve neighborhood. This proximity alleviated some distress for Diogo, as living amongst familiar faces brought some semblance of comfort during such trying times. Despite being quite young, Diogo showcased remarkable skill in handling challenging situations through patience and optimism. At 18, he completed his degree in computer technology in 2017 and secured a 6-month internship at Vila Vita Park, a renowned 5-star tourist hotel. His performance there was noteworthy, leading the executives to offer him a technician role. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept this position, resigning from his job at a fast food restaurant chain where he had worked for nearly a year and attained the role of duty manager. He embarked on a new chapter of his life, anticipating numerous opportunities that would aid his progress after the difficulties he had faced. As Diogo began to settle into his new job and look towards a brighter future, he decided to purchase a car. He formed good relationships with colleagues, including Maria Malva, a 19-year-old security guard at the hotel, who particularly caught his attention. Like Diogo, Maria also came from humble beginnings and had encountered significant challenges. Her mother struggled with mental health issues. While her father abandoned the family early on, she never reconnected with him. Maria was passionate about martial arts and practiced karate. While she aspired to become a police officer, her application was rejected due to her tattoo. This setback led her to enroll in training at a security company specializing in various private security sectors. Diogo openly expressed his admiration for Maria from the start, but she did not reciprocate his feelings and was rather aloof towards him. Fabio Acosta, a close friend of Diogo's, mentioned that Diogo was infatuated with Maria. According to Fabio, Diogo's dedication to her was intense enough that he declined an attractive job offer from the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon because he did not wish to be separated from her. Additionally, when Maria was working her shift, Diogo often brought meals for her. As time went on, they became almost inseparable observers, frequently assumed they were a couple despite there being no romantic relationship between them. Maria confided in Diogo that she wanted no romantic involvement, as she had recently ended a toxic relationship with a naval officer, but simultaneously gave him mixed signals. Despite this ambiguity, Diogo never abandoned hope for a future with her, and continuously sought ways to be near her and show his affection through various gestures aimed at pleasing her. One day, Diogo was deeply disappointed when he stumbled upon a video on social media showing Maria kissing another girl on the lips. He felt upset because he believed she should have informed him that she did not like men and that this was why they would never be together. Fabio, Diogo's best friend, attempted to calm him by explaining that girls sometimes do this, but Diogo remained unconvinced. He insisted that she had misled him and that this was why she had rejected his romantic advances. Despite this disappointment, Diogo and Maria stayed friends. She continued to accept his gifts and invitations for dates. Many times, Diogo offered to walk her home, but she always mentioned that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and did not want another man entering her apartment. Time went by, and in December 2019, Diogo learned he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which happened 3 years prior. After receiving the amount of €70,000, he decided it was time to purchase a house so he wouldn't need to keep paying rent. Diogo then shared this exciting news with his friend Maria. Shortly thereafter, Maria resigned from her job at the hotel. She said she could no longer tolerate her co-workers' comments about the supposed relationship between her and Diogo. Additionally, she explained that she wanted more time with her mother, who required significant attention due to a mental illness. Initially, there was no reason to doubt her explanations. However, subsequent events hinted that her decision to quit might have been driven by more sinister motives. This is where Mariana Fona comes into play, a 20-year-old nurse at the hospital who had a stable relationship with Maria. The two young women lived together in Mariana's parents' home since they were not financially secure enough to live independently and enjoy their relationship fully. Maria found herself in this situation when she learned about the significant sum of money Diogo would receive. Interestingly, from that point onward, Maria started drawing closer to Diogo. It appears likely that Maria shared this information with Mariana together. They plotted to deceive him and gain access to his bank account details with the intention of stealing his compensation money. One day, after Diogo had repeatedly refused, Maria informed the young man that she wished to spend a romantic evening with him. This proposal was a surprising gift for the 20-year-old, who found it hard to believe his ears. After waiting for so long, the idea of being close to the girl he loved made him ecstatic. Their rendezvous was scheduled for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was elated and had no doubts about what might have led Maria to change her mind so abruptly. Although Maria and Mariana shared different accounts of what transpired that day, the following details are based on media reports and official information. Upon Diogo's arrival, Mariana offered him orange juice that she had brought herself. Unbeknownst to him, the drink contained a hidden ingredient: 3 ampoules of DIM, a central nervous system drug with anesthetic and sedative effects. Mariana reportedly proposed using this substance, which she had stolen from the hospital where she worked. The girl's plan entailed sedating Diogo to access his banking information and manipulate his fingers to unlock his phone. Mariana allegedly waited in a car outside while her friend executed their plan. She sent multiple texts to Maria, checking if the drug had taken effect, since it was acting slower than anticipated. Inside, tensions rose as Diogo grew increasingly unnerved, without understanding what was happening. Attempting to calm him, Maria promised an erotic dance, but insisted on tying him to a table first. After several minutes in this restrained position, Diogo panicked and pleaded with Maria to release him. Her demeanor turned aggressive as they began to struggle. Using her martial arts skills, she overpowered Diogo, bringing him down and restraining his neck with her arms, yet cutting off his air supply. According to Mariana's account, Maria eventually summoned her into the apartment. Mariana found Diogo on the floor and questioned Maria about deviating from their original plan, merely stealing his keys and taking his money. Upon discovering that Diogo was unresponsive, the nurse administered resuscitative measures. Upon awakening in a highly agitated state, he attempted to attack Mariana. Perhaps recognizing another conspirator against him, he tried defending himself. Reacting to Diogo's aggressive response towards her friend, Maria intervened by grabbing him from behind once more, bringing him down and constricting his neck again. In light of these events, both women's actions have been scrutinized as part of ongoing investigations rooted in available evidence and testimonies provided by those involved. Diogo's life tragically ended at the hands of the girl he loved. His body lay in the living room of Maria and Mariana's house, where they immediately set about their planned robbery. They first cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, access a mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process took several days due to a daily transaction limit. The crime occurred just as COVID-19 restrictions began, with remote working becoming commonplace. Diogo was supposed to go to work the next day. The girls attempted to prevent his co-workers from noticing his absence and raising concerns. They sent a message from Diogo's phone to an IT colleague, stating Diogo could not go to work and needed a replacement. This message raised suspicion because Diogo wasn't known for making such requests at short notice. When asked if everything was all right, Diogo's phone responded affirmatively. Conversations between this hotel employee and others continued through Friday into part of Saturday, but the messages increasingly seemed uncharacteristic of Diogo. One of these messages reached Diogo's supervisor, stating Diogo wouldn't return to work as he had met a woman from France and would be moving in with her. This struck the boss as odd, since Diogo was known for his reliability and wouldn't abruptly leave his job. Seeking clarification, the supervisor tried calling Diogo but received no answer. Another message claimed Diogo wasn't in a condition for phone calls. The supervisor responded that hearing directly from Diogo would be reassuring. The reactions from Diogo's loved ones to these impersonated messages led Maria and Mariana to adjust their strategy regarding his disappearance. They decided to fabricate a scenario suggesting that Diogo had taken his own life and then plotted to dismember his remains for disposal. Maria later confessed their plan was inspired by the TV series Dexter, which depicts a forensic expert who eliminates criminals while erasing traces of his crimes by dismembering victims. These actions highlight how communication breakdowns and erratic behaviors can raise suspicions and lead authorities closer to uncovering criminal deeds, even when efforts are made to mislead those searching for answers. After executing their reprehensible plan, they placed Diogo's body in trash bags, storing them in the trunk of their vehicle. They then proceeded to an ATM and a shopping mall. Security cameras captured them hugging and laughing. Upon returning to their residence, they began the gruesome task of dismembering body. Diogo's torso was eventually placed in a black bag, with the remaining parts disposed of in a container. During these events at Mariana's parental home, Diogo's friends initiated a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. The authorities waited the mandatory 48 hours before officially declaring him missing. Subsequently, the girls departed from the house. Maria drove Diogo's car towards the cliff near Cabo de San Vicente Lighthouse, with Mariana following in her own car. At approximately 2 p.m., Mariana discarded Diogo's torso off the cliff, abandoning his car nearby to create an impression that Diogo had ended his own life. Unfortunately for them, Maria did not anticipate that instead of falling into the sea, the remains would become lodged on a rock. The girls then departed together in Mariana's car. They drove approximately 7 kilometers to the Pego do Inferno waterfall in Tavira, where they disposed of what remained of Diogo into the water. Shortly after this incident, Diogo's vehicle was discovered in a parking lot near Cabo de San Vicente Lighthouse. Reports indicated that 2 laptops were found within the car. Forensic police arrived promptly and conducted thorough land and sea searches. This led to the discovery of a young man's torso, partially enveloped by a black garbage bag near one location along the coast. Simultaneously, at another coastal site, Pego do Inferno, a French couple made a horrifying discovery: Diogo's head. After extensive efforts from law enforcement officers, his hands and feet were also recovered. The investigators handling this case found several aspects puzzling, considering that Diogo appeared to be an unassuming individual who avoided unsavory company based on collected data about him. Further probing by authorities revealed that Diogo had received significant compensation following his mother's death. They uncovered substantial transfers from Diogo's account to Maria's account through monetary transactions, tracking methodically carried out by investigators. The detectives' next step was to locate Maria and clarify why Diogo's funds ended up with her. The girl then attempted to persuade the police that she had killed the young man because he was attempting to abuse her. She asserted this as the reason she left the hotel before the incident. However, an examination of the text messages between the victim and Maria revealed that this was not true. She and Diogo had grown closer after Maria stopped working. During her first interaction with the officers, Maria claims sole responsibility for planning and executing the actions leading to the fatal shooting. She emphasized that Mariana had no involvement in the crime. However, Mariana's account contradicted Maria's claims. The nurse stated that Maria confided in her a plan to steal Diogo's money, but intended to take his life as well. She wanted him to suffer enough to disclose his bank account password. The collected evidence proved sufficient for convicting both girls. Investigators had phone records, the deceased's cell phone, and ATM surveillance footage at their disposal. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge meticulously followed Maria's recounting of events, where she insisted on pleading guilty and denied any involvement of Mariana. According to her version, Diogo's body remained for 2 days in a car parked in a garage, and it was there that his remains were dismembered when Mariana's family slept. After hearing Mariana's detailed account of events, the judge repeatedly asked about her whereabouts during the dismemberment executed with surgical precision at the joints. The courtroom's attention turned towards Mariana. She anticipated these questions and stated that since everyone knew she worked at a hospital, they assumed she dismembered the corpse herself. To clarify matters further, she suggested using internet resources for verification. Given the seriousness of this cold, calculated, reckless, and brutal crime, both individuals received custodial sentences, as determined by the judge. A few months later, on February 24, 2021, the trial began. During her testimony on February 26, 2021, Maria confirmed that she initially wanted revenge on Diogo for the alleged attempted violence, but stated she did not intend to take his life. The defendant admitted her intent was to humiliate the victim and verified that her friend had no relationship with the young man and was unaware of the alleged attempted violence. Maria also asserted that her actions were not motivated by compensation. The girls appeared in court together, however, they did not look at each other throughout the trial. Rumor suggests that after their arrest and subsequent jail time, they decided to end their relationship. The trial included testimony from several witnesses, including forensic expert Teresa Costa. The expert explained that the amount of dipum found in Diogo's blood was significantly less than expected from 3 ampoules, suggesting either Diogo had not taken the prescribed dose or had ingested it many hours before his death. On April 27, 2021, the court issued its decision. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, accessory to desecration of a body, robbery, unlawful access, and fraud. Additionally, she was convicted of carjacking and possession of an illegal weapon. She received a sentence of 25 years in prison and was ordered to pay Diogo's father €265,000 in compensation. Mariana was acquitted of murder but found guilty of desecrating a corpse and complicity in fraud. For this, she received a sentence of 4 years in prison. She was released because none of the offenses involved pre-trial detention until final sentencing. The court concluded that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo demonstrated she did not intend to kill him. In reaching this decision, the judge took into account Mariana's confession where she expressed full responsibility for her actions. However, this verdict was not well received by the Portuguese public, who viewed Mariana as equally culpable in the heinous crime against Diogo as Maria. Following the verdict, Mariana exited through the back door where her father, present at all hearings, awaited her. Milford is a charming coastal city located in Connecticut, United States. Situated on the Long Island Sound, it offers picturesque views and a vibrant community. Covering an area of just over 25 square miles, it has a population of over 50,000 people. Known for its beautiful beaches, Milford attracts visitors and residents alike who appreciate its scenic landscapes and waterfront activities. The city boasts a rich history dating back to colonial times, with a blend of historic architecture and modern amenities. The people of Milford would never know that a tragedy was about to befall there in 2022. But first, let's uncover the layers of her past. Julie Minogue entered the world on July 19, 1982, in the charming town of Goshen, New York. She was blessed with loving parents, Gerald J. Minogue and Sandra Barish Doper, who nourished her alongside her two siblings, sister Allison Barati Corcoran and brother Peter Gerald Minogue. Growing up, Julie thrived academically, attending the esteemed Monroe Woodbury schools and later graduating from Monroe Woodbury High School. She further pursued her education at Orange County Community College, expanding her knowledge and embracing new experiences along the way. After college, Julie Minogue became a devoted medical assistant at Connecticut Coastal Obstetrics Gynecology and found joy in various aspects of her life. She embraced an active lifestyle, which was regularly engaging in running and walking to keep herself energized. However, her true passion lay in being a mother to her two sons, Nicholas Keith Turner and Sean Michael Turner. The details about her marriage and husband are unknown at this point. Julie's dedication and love as a single mother were remarkable, shaping the strong bond shared among them. Julie Minogue found love once again in 2017 and got into a relationship with a man from Roxbury named Ewan Anthony DeWitt. Together, they welcomed a son in 2019 named Luke Anthony Minogue into their lives. However, as time passed, difficulties arose in their relationship, which led Julie to make the decision to leave Ewan in 2021. She moved with her sons to a condo on Salem Walk in Milford, and their well-being remained her top priority. In 2022, Nicholas, the eldest son, was 21 years old and had bravely served his country in the Coast Guard, while Sean, at 17 years old, was a vibrant young man and was thriving as a high school senior. Her son with Ewan, Luke, was 3 and a bright light in their household. Julie herself was 40, and all seemed well for her and her 3 boys. But tragedy was waiting just around the corner. Late at night on December 6, 2022, 17-year-old Nicholas Minogue was startled awake by chilling screams. He didn't wake up at the first noise, and he dismissed it, thinking that it could just be echoes from the neighborhood. But the cries were growing louder and more urgent, and he realized something was terribly wrong. Concerned about his mother's safety, Nicholas rushed down the stairs. As he descended, amidst the darkness, he caught a glimpse of a chilling scene. A man wielding an axe and his mother lying on the floor, her body drenched in blood. In the midst of the chaos, Nicholas heard the haunting words, "You didn't believe me," ringing in his ears. In a panic, the teenager raced upstairs and swiftly locked the door, determined to keep himself safe. He dialed 911 and urgently reported the horrifying scene which had unfolded before him. Determined to provide an extra layer of protection, he quickly placed a sturdy chair behind the locked door. With his heart pounding, he opened his window, desperately reaching out for help. Within minutes, police officers arrived and entered the house, but the teenager, gripped by fear, leapt out of the window. That's when he heard Milford PD shouts and realized it was not the intruder. Eventually, the authorities found the courageous teen and ensured his safety. In a devastating discovery, the police entered the kitchen to find Julie Minogue lying in a pool of blood on the floor. Her face and skull had been injured by multiple deep cuts. A chilling sight awaited them as they spotted a large axe resting on the stove nearby, carrying evidence of the horrific crime. Meanwhile, in the living room, Julie's young son Luke, who was 3 years old, sat on the couch, completely stunned and unresponsive. Not a tear nor a word escaped him, as if he was frozen in shock. The officer stayed by his side and offered him comfort and support until additional officers arrived at the scene. Following her tragic demise, Julie's body was carefully transported to the Connecticut office of the Chief Medical Examiner for a thorough examination. After conducting a meticulous autopsy, The medical examiner determined the cause of her death to be the chopped wounds and blunt impact injuries on the head, torso, and extremities. The detailed findings provided crucial evidence regarding the nature of the attack, shedding light on the tragic circumstances surrounding her untimely demise. As the police took custody of the axe found on the gas stove, they meticulously combed through every inch of the area, as they were determined to uncover any potential evidence that could lead them closer to the perpetrator. Inside the house, they embarked on an extensive search, carefully examining each room for any clues that could shed light on the heinous crime. The commotion attracted the attention of concerned neighbors who gathered nearby. The atmosphere was tense as the community was eager to support the investigation in any way they could. Amidst the growing crowd, a helpful neighbor came forward with an unexpected piece of evidence: ring camera footage from outside his house at Longmeadow Complex. The police eagerly seized the opportunity, hoping that the footage might hold a crucial clue. As they watched the footage, they witnessed an unsettling sight. An individual walking with an axe in hand, closely resembling the description provided by Nicholas. The discovery sent a wave of anticipation through the investigators, as they realized they might have found a significant lead. The police began to look into who this man with the axe could be. That very day on December 6, 2022, a crucial breakthrough took place when a concerned woman called the police, recounting a chilling phone call from her son. In her trembling voice, she shared the shocking revelation that her son just called her and said that he killed his girlfriend. The urgency in her words sparked an immediate response from law enforcement. Determined to unravel the truth, they swiftly tracked down the woman and engaged her in conversation. It was then revealed that the man responsible for this ominous confession was none other than Ewan Dewitt, the 42-year-old man who was once in a relationship with Julie. With this vital information in hand, the police dialed Ewan's number, hoping to engage him in a crucial conversation. However, their efforts were met with resistance as Ewan abruptly hung up the call. So it was important for the police to look into Ewan's history, which they believed could provide them vital information needed to proceed further. Born in the town of Roxbury in 1979, Ewan Anthony Dewitt possessed a diverse range of interests and pursuits. As a talented athlete, he pursued his passion for ice hockey and even reached the level of playing semi-professionally. Ewan's thirst for knowledge led him to obtain a bachelor's degree in history from Siena College, showcasing his intellectual curiosity. He was not a person who'd be satisfied from a single vocation, so he also embarked on the journey to become a firefighter. Additionally, Ewan also shared his expertise as a personal trainer. In 2006, Ewan was arrested in Connecticut for driving under the influence and traffic offenses. He pleaded guilty, resulting in a suspended prison sentence and probation. After this, Ewan Dewitt's journey took an inspiring turn when he joined the prestigious ranks of the U.S. Marine Corps in 2009, where he embarked on a path as a skilled weapons specialist and non-commissioned officer. He served his country for 5 years and attained the rank of Lance Corporal in 2011. In a remarkable photo from his time in the Marines, Lance Corporal Ewan Dewitt is seen in action as a machine gunner. The picture shows him courageously operating a powerful M2 50 caliber machine gun on a vehicle during an important defense of the amphibious task and forced naval exercise. The event took place on December 3, 2011, aboard the USS Chima. With his leadership qualities and expertise, he assumed the role of a machine gun section leader in the esteemed 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. Ewan dedicated himself to his duties, serving multiple tours in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and other classified locations with his dedicated brothers. Ewan and his brothers' inspiring story was captured in a 2015 article in the Register Citizen, highlighting their collective efforts to restore a piece of history. Ewan's life took a darker turn when he faced legal trouble. In November 2019, the Milford police arrested him for assaulting a victim, which resulted in a protective order being issued by the court. The case remains unresolved, as court records revealed that it was still pending. With his next court date scheduled for April 14, 2023, Ewan maintained his innocence by pleading not guilty. He was released on a $20,000 bond, awaiting the judicial process to unfold. Ewan's troubled past included a disturbing incident in which he was arrested for his actions towards Julie shortly after the birth of their son. Reports stated that he'd thrown a large object at Julie Minogue and had also destroyed her phone to prevent her from calling for help. Fearing for her safety, Julie sought refuge at a neighbor's house and contacted the authorities. The incident highlighted the alarming nature of Ewan's behavior and its impact on those around him, adding another layer of intensity to the unfolding events. In 2021, he faced charges of assaulting emergency personnel and a female in Wake County, North Carolina. Court records indicated that he pled guilty and received a combined jail sentence of 95 days, although the exact duration of his incarceration remained unknown. These encounters with the law showcased a pattern of concerning behavior, raising further questions about Ewan's character and past actions. Behind Ewan DeWitt's troubled history, a darker pattern of violence emerged, specifically targeting Julie Minogue. Several protective orders were filed against Ewan due to previous instances of domestic violence. These orders were issued in November 2019 and January 2021, and were put in place to safeguard not only Julie, but also the children who were present during those incidents. One such incident involved Ewan being intoxicated and engaging in a heated argument with Julie. According to a statement provided by the victim's son, Ewan had thrown a playpen at Julie's head, which resulted in a distressing injury. While Ewan was in rehabilitation, Julie took steps to file a restraining order, seeking protection from his harmful actions. Despite this, Ewan was granted visitation rights, which left a lingering sense of unease and concern about the safety of those involved. In addition to their troubled relationship, Julie and Ewan DeWitt found themselves entangled in family court cases beginning in 2021. It all began when Julie filed a petition for child support for their son Luke in August 2021. In October 2021, a judge ruled in her favor and ordered Ewan to provide financial support. As tensions continued to escalate, Ewan took Julie to court in December 2021, seeking resolution regarding visitation rights. The court intervened and granted supervised visitation for Ewan in April 2022, with a scheduled hearing in April 2023 to further address the matter. These legal battles shed light on the complexities and challenges faced by Julie and Ewan as they navigated their post-relationship dynamics. As the investigation progressed, new details were revealed that on November 14, 2022, just 3 weeks before her death, Julie took a decisive step by visiting the Milford Police Department to file a complaint against Ewan. She alleged that he bombarded her with over 200 text messages within a span of just 2 days, despite the existence of a protective order that explicitly forbade him from contacting her. Officer Scott Nablin listened to Julie's concerns and diligently collected evidence of the text messages from her phone, further solidifying the case against Ewan. In a heartfelt plea for protection, Julie Minogue expressed her deep concern for her safety and the well-being of her children in a sworn affidavit submitted on November 17, 2022. Determined to put an end to the ongoing abuse, she stated, "I don't believe I should endure this mistreatment any longer." Fearful of the consequences, she detailed the relentless harassment she faced. Julie Minogue also wrote in the document that, "Ewan has got himself into a lot of trouble with drugs and alcohol, and I'm scared he's going to kill me." Officer Nablin, resolute in his pursuit of justice, meticulously crafted an arrest warrant, alleging Ewan's violation of the protective order. The document, filled with crucial details, was reviewed by a supervisor, ensuring its accuracy and validity. They made sure that the arrest warrant application contained the requisite probable cause to support the charge that the text messages sent by Ewan DeWitt violated the modified protective order that was issued on January 15, 2021. On November 21, 2022, the court reopened the warrant application and made its way to the Milford State's Attorney's Office. However, the story took an unexpected turn as the Assistant State's Attorney, committed to thoroughness, sent the warrant application back to Officer Nablin and requested further information before proceeding. In this delicate dance between law and justice, every step forward demanded meticulous attention to detail. However, on December 1, 2022, Julie Minogue successfully obtained a civil restraining order from a judge. In the hearing, which lasted about an hour, Julie presented evidence of the text messages, Ewan's struggles with substance abuse, mental health issues, and a history of violence. She expressed concern for Ewan's well-being, describing his bipolar rage and erratic behavior, and emphasized the importance of him receiving proper treatment and therapy. Julie firmly believed that Ewan should not be allowed around anyone until he'd received the necessary help and support. Recognizing the imminent danger she faced, a no-contact restraining order was swiftly issued on December 1, 2022, providing a legal shield against any further interaction with Ewan. But this order took a darker turn when, 5 days later, Ewan killed Julie with an axe in her condo. Now, all the evidence indicated that Ewan was the main focus of the investigation, and the search for him intensified as the police tirelessly canvassed the area around the Salem Walk condominium, leaving no stone unturned. Their efforts led them to a dive bar on Ocean Avenue in West Haven, where they sought the assistance of the local community. They approached patrons, informing them about the ongoing investigation and urging them to notify the authorities if they spotted Ewan DeWitt. It was during this concerted effort that two observant individuals caught sight of a person who matched the suspect's description. Eager to aid the investigation, they immediately flagged down the police, providing crucial information about the suspect's whereabouts. Engaging with one of the witnesses, who preferred to remain anonymous, the police learned that the individual had witnessed someone resembling the suspect wandering around the parking lot for a brief period. Eventually, the suspect entered a food truck located in the parking lot. Acting swiftly, the police converged on the scene. Without incident, they apprehended Ewan DeWitt on December 6, 2022, bringing him into custody and moving one step closer to uncovering the truth. The police initiated a rigorous interrogation of Ewan about the early hours of December 6, 2022. Initially, Ewan maintained a stoic silence, withholding vital information. However, after hours of intense questioning, a breakthrough occurred. Ewan finally confessed to the gruesome act of taking Julie's life with an axe. He revealed that he'd silently entered the house through the kitchen window, concealing himself in anticipation of his victim's arrival. When Julie eventually entered the kitchen, he launched an attack, wielding the axe with deadly intent. It was during this horrifying moment that Nicholas, Julie's son, descended the stairs and confronted the scene. Overwhelmed with fear, Ewan fled, leaving the axe behind on the gas stove. Ewan's admission sent shockwaves through the investigation, bringing forth a chilling account of the tragic events that unfolded that night. During Ewan's initial court appearance in State Superior Court in Milford on December 7, 2022, Assistant State Attorney Alana Paul informed the judge about new developments in the case. She revealed that Ewan had fully admitted to the incident, but even without that admission, she believed the evidence against him was substantial. Attorney Paul highlighted the presence of surveillance footage and the testimony of Julie's son, who had observed part of the incident. Given the seriousness of the case, Paul argued that a significant bond was necessary. Emphasizing the gravity of the situation, Judge Auden Groggins set his bond at $5 million. The judge expressed concerns about Ewan's history of disregarding court orders and emphasized the importance of public safety. In light of the circumstances, Ewan was placed on suicide watch, with a hearing scheduled for December 14, 2022, to further address the case. Finally, it was the day of the final decision. On December 14, 2022, in addition to the murder charge, Ewan DeWitt faced multiple other charges brought forth by the Milford police. These included criminal violation of a protective order, criminal violation of a restraining order, risk of injury to a minor, and reckless endangerment. By levying these charges, law enforcement sought to address the broader scope of Ewan's alleged actions and their impact. A hearing was scheduled for Ewan DeWitt's pending criminal cases on April 6, 2023. He has yet to plead. Prosecutors stated that Ewan already confessed to the murder of Julie Minogue. However, no further information has been released by the police about the hearing. In the statement, the family expressed their determination to take action and ensure that those who neglected their responsibilities are held accountable. They also expressed their hope that this case would serve as a catalyst for improved protections for individuals facing domestic violence and abuse. With their unwavering commitment, the family aims to bring about positive changes and prevent such tragic incidents from occurring in the future. This case involved a combination of diligent efforts by law enforcement and the heinous acts of a killer who killed his ex-girlfriend in a rage of anger. A paradise beach turned into a death trap for lovers. It is believed that an investigation on the heels of a crime is the most effective and often leads to success. The methodology itself implies immediate response, operational collection of evidence, and questioning of witnesses, which significantly increases the chances of quickly solving the case and holding the guilty accountable. However, if it is not possible to identify the perpetrator, the investigation can drag on for years and even decades until the criminal case is frozen and transferred to the archive after the statute of limitations expires. However, sometimes unsolved and seemingly hopeless investigations receive unexpected developments many years later, which helps to find the right lead and achieve results when no one believed it anymore. The case of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen, which had been gathering dust on the shelves for almost 15 years, is a prime example of this. At the time, it was not possible to solve it despite the operational actions of the investigative team and the high reward offered for any information. The main problem was the lack of motive for such a brutal act against the loving couple. In addition to this, it was not possible to find any witnesses, murder weapons, or any significant clues. It was a typical dead end, and no one hoped that the truth would ever be discovered. However, a decade and a half later, solving this case was helped by another brutal crime. It also turned out that at least 4 people knew what had happened, but all these years, they remained silent. Who were Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen? Lindsay Cutshall was born in the small town of White Eyes in Coshocton County, Ohio, in 1982. She grew up in a very religious family, and her father was a pastor of a Christian community. Despite a strict upbringing from childhood, she was very active, engaged in sports, and later became interested in hiking and extreme tourism. After finishing school, Lindsay became a student at Appalachian Bible College in West Virginia. During those years, she regularly climbed mountains of various difficulty levels, rafted down turbulent mountain rivers, and even organized hikes herself. The young woman dreamed of founding her own summer camp for children and teenagers, where she could teach them the basics of survival in the wild, rafting, tourism, and so on. Jason Allen was born in the city of Zeeland, in the American state of Michigan, in 1978. He also grew up in a deeply religious family and from a teenage age was seriously interested in hiking tours, mastering survival in the wild. The young man was tall, athletic, toned, possessed leadership qualities, and was able to find like-minded people to conquer new heights. The couple met in 2002 during a hiking trip in the Appalachians. At that time, Lindsay was still a student, while Jason worked as a mountain guide and climbing instructor. The young people immediately felt mutual sympathy, and just 6 months after their first meeting, the young man came to the girl's parents and asked for their daughter's hand in marriage. Her parents were not opposed and gave their blessing to the lovers. The young man's parents also approved of his choice, after which the couple was officially engaged. Allen presented the young woman with a beautiful diamond ring for this occasion, which was soon to be complemented by another, an engagement ring. The young couple planned to get married in September 2004, had big plans for their future together, and wanted to buy their own large house where they could live comfortably and raise their children. Unfortunately, these plans were not meant to come true. The final trip. In the summer of 2004, Lindsay and Jason worked as senior counselors at a Christian summer camp called Rock N Water, located in El Dorado County, California. After their wedding, they planned to open their own similar camp, so they were gaining experience and learning the nuances of working with the younger generation. On the evening of Friday, August 14th of that year, the couple decided to take a weekend trip to the San Francisco area. They informed their colleagues of their plans in advance, leaving 2 of the most experienced counselors in charge of the camp. Lindsay and Jason promised to return by Monday, so their short journey was expected to cause no complications either for the couple or for their temporary replacements. They set off in a 1992 red Ford Tempo, owned by Lindsay, and that was the last time anyone saw them alive. By Sunday evening, the counselors had not returned to the camp, but no alarm was raised then, as everyone was confident that the couple would arrive either late at night or early Monday morning. However, when it was discovered after the morning roll call at 8 a.m. that Jason and Lindsay were still missing and their phones were unreachable, their colleagues decided to contact the police and also informed the missing couple's families about the situation. The parents, horrified upon hearing the news, rushed to the camp to learn more about the incident. Everyone knew that the couple was very responsible in their duties. They were never late, and if any unforeseen circumstances had occurred, they would have found a way to communicate that. The challenging search. Upon arrival at the camp, law enforcement officials interviewed the couple's colleagues, and the investigation immediately encountered a serious problem. No one could precisely say where the young couple had gone. It was only known that they planned to explore around San Francisco, and given their great love for adventure and extreme leisure, they could be in the most remote corners where there was neither communication nor civilization. While the police waited the legally mandated 2 days during which the missing were expected to report themselves, relatives and friends decided not to just sit back, but to organize a search themselves. They called everyone they knew, trying to find out when the couple last made contact with anyone, distributed flyers with photos of the bride and groom, and requested anyone who might have seen them to respond immediately. By Tuesday, law enforcement had joined the search operation. The main search unfolded around San Francisco, its suburbs and surroundings. However, the area was vast, and it was simply not possible to thoroughly comb through it. Then, one of the friends noted that the couple loved the wild, rocky beaches that were always beautiful and secluded, prompting the police to focus on these areas. Bodies in sleeping bags. For several days, the search yielded no results, and the hope of finding the couple alive was diminishing rapidly. Then, on Wednesday, August 19th, a patrol helicopter flying over one of the rocky, wild beaches reported that 2 bodies were found in sleeping bags on the desolate coast, and it seemed unlikely they were just resting there. The first thing police encountered upon arriving at the scene was a red Ford Tempo parked on a cliff near a lookout point in a small shelter for tourists, from which a steep trail led directly to the scenic wild beach. The car was immediately checked in the database and found to belong to the missing student, Lindsay Cutshall. Descending the trail to the beach, law enforcement found 2 bright sleeping bags containing individuals. At first, it might have seemed they were merely sleeping, but no response came to calls or noise. Approaching closer, the officers saw that the sleeping bags contained a young man and woman, both showing no signs of life. A brief initial examination suggested that their lives had been taken by gunshot wounds to the head, and given the distinctive smell of decomposition, they had been there for more than a day. All the belongings of the deceased, including mobile phones and wallets containing bank cards and cash, were found beside them. Therefore, a robbery as the main motive was almost immediately ruled out. The keys to the parked car above were also visibly placed, ruling out car theft as a motive. Investigators immediately suspected that the deceased were the same young people who had gone missing last week near San Francisco. Their suspicion was confirmed by documents found nearby under the names Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen, but the bodies still needed to be identified by relatives. The arriving parents of the couple, who had hoped until the last that the remains belonged to someone else, were devastated by grief upon recognizing their children. Investigation and initial theories. Thus, theories involving robbery or an attempted carjacking were dismissed since all valuables, money and keys were left untouched in plain sight. Moreover, forensic analysis revealed no signs of physical assault or intimate assault on the bodies, except for the gunshot wounds to the head. It appeared that Lindsay and Jason were simply sleeping peacefully at the time of the incident and did not have a chance to react. They made no attempt to defend themselves, flee, or even get out of their sleeping bags. Everything pointed to a swift act that resembled an execution or vendetta. But who could have taken the lives of 2 individuals in such a brutal manner, and why? The questions multiplied, but no answers were forthcoming. There were no signs that anyone else had stayed in the area. The beach was quite secluded, and accessing it via the steep trail was challenging. Despite efforts, no shell casings were found nearby, leading investigators to theorize that the shooter either took them or threw them into the ocean. The shots had been fired at close range into the heads of the sleeping tourists, indicated by specific traces, so the casings, if not deliberately moved, would have been nearby. Interestingly, the beach appeared quite clean, yet a few meters from where the sleeping bags with the bodies were found, an empty beer bottle lay. The deceased did not drink alcohol as they led a healthy lifestyle, suggesting the bottle might belong to the mysterious shooter. This particular brand of beer was rarely found in the area and likely came from a neighboring state. As no other clues were found, this bottle was considered a significant lead, although it was unclear whether it had any connection to the shooter or the crime. A theory was proposed that the deceased might have had a conflict with someone the day before the tragedy, and their opponent returned at night with a weapon to settle the score. Although Jason and Lindsay were very friendly with everyone, it was not excluded that they might have inadvertently displeased someone either in appearance or for some other reason. Additionally, the shooter could have been intoxicated or mentally unstable. From the bullets extracted from the victims' skulls, experts determined they were fired from a Marlin brand rifle, .45 caliber, model 1894, produced by Marlin Firearms Company. This was a rare weapon that might have been part of a collector's arsenal. Such models were typically used for hunting. This clue was significant for the ongoing investigation, but it remained the only one for the time being. Investigators speculated that the shooter was likely a male acting alone. He could have been a hunter, collector, or firearm enthusiast. The couple's route, search, and witness interviews. The investigation now aimed to establish the route the couple had taken, who they might have contacted, and when they were last seen alive. The first task presented few issues, as the couple had taken numerous photos, and their camera remained untouched among their personal belongings. Additionally, in the tourist cabin near the lookout point where they parked their car, there was a guest book where visitors could leave notes. The engaged couple had written a couple of entries expressing that it was one of the best weekends of their lives, filled with love, happiness, and the discovery of perhaps the most beautiful beach they had ever seen. It was discovered that on Saturday the couple had stopped at a fishing pier about 20 miles from where their lives were ultimately taken. This was evidenced by the photographs they had taken there, prompting law enforcement to visit the area and speak with locals in search of potential witnesses. Many remembered the young couple traveling in a red car. They were looking for a place to stay overnight, but found no vacancies in any of the 3 nearby hotels. This was because August is peak tourist season in the area, and most travelers booked their accommodations well in advance. The couple then dined at a local restaurant, walked around the area, took several photos, and set off again in the evening. According to everyone who saw and interacted with them, they were friendly, engaged in no conflicts, and appeared happy and carefree. None of the witnesses could recall anything suspicious or unusual. Notably, the beach where the bodies were found was located in a protected area where camping was prohibited. However, since the young people could not find a place to stay overnight, they decided to settle on the beach, but chose not to set up a tent, instead using their sleeping bags. They believed that on a warm August night on a secluded beach, they faced no threats, and planned to head back at dawn to return to the Rock and Water camp on Sunday as promised. This information helped narrow down the time frame during which the couple was likely taken from life. They went to sleep but did not survive until morning, indicating they were likely taken from life between 11 o'clock Saturday night and dawn on Sunday. The first suspect. Although the investigation into the double taking of life was in full swing and news broadcasts urged anyone with any relevant information to contact the police, law enforcement withheld certain details. In particular, the results of the ballistics analysis were kept secret to avoid alerting the suspect and prompting them to hastily dispose of the weapon used in the crime. Initially, suspicion fell on a local drifter who periodically slept on that very beach and had been seen nearby on the evening before the crime. The homeless man, mentioned by some witnesses, was quickly located, brought to the station, and interrogated. The 57-year-old suspect had no alibi for the night of the crime. However, his involvement could not be confirmed. The main reasons were the absence of the weapon used in the crime and the fact that his DNA did not match that found on the beer bottle discovered on the beach. A new phase of the investigation in 2006. For nearly 2 years, the investigation had been at a standstill with no clear direction on how to proceed. Then, in the spring of 2006, law enforcement decided to publicize the data they had on the weapon used in the crime and to reach out again to potential witnesses by offering a $50,000 reward for any useful information that could lead to the perpetrator. Following this announcement, about 1,000 calls came in, but most did not aid the advancement of the investigation. However, law enforcement became interested in 26-year-old Sean Gallen, pointed out by several locals. According to them, the young man collected firearms and bladed weapons, behaved aggressively, was frequently involved in conflicts, threatened acts of violence, and occasionally damaged other people's property. Sean was arrested and questioned. He had previously been on the police's radar for brawling, hooliganism, and driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. He indeed had an impressive collection of weapons, but the specific rifle in question was not among them. Verifying his alibi from 2 years prior proved impossible, and his DNA did not match the sample found on the beer bottle at the crime scene, so Gallen had to be released. A suspect from another country? Simultaneously, another suspicious and aggressive drifter came under scrutiny, often seen with a firearm, frightening the local residents. His name was Joseph Henry Burgess, and he was 61 years old at the time of the couple's demise. Burgess often ranted about receiving commands from God. It was discovered that in the late 1970s, Joseph lived in Canada, where he also wandered aimlessly. In 1978, he joined the Commune of the Children of God, positioning himself as a deeply religious person, and according to those around him, he was quite the fanatic. He soon had a conflict with 2 young people that escalated into outright enmity, and a few weeks later, these individuals were found lifeless, each with several close-range gunshot wounds to the head. Notably, their bodies were also discovered on a beach in sleeping bags, seemingly taken while they slept. By the time the police arrived, Burgess had vanished. His guilt was proven through numerous left-behind clues, but he could not be convicted as he had fled to the USA, crossing the border illegally. He managed to evade capture for nearly a quarter of a century until the police connected him with the double homicide on a beach in California. However, they were unable to interrogate him as a shootout occurred during his apprehension, resulting in the deaths of a police sergeant and Burgess himself who opened fire. A fatal echo from the past. In the spring of 2017 in Forestville, California, a tragedy unfolded one night on March 14th. Gunshots rang out in the Gallen family home, prompting alarmed neighbors to immediately call the police. The victim was 35-year-old Seamus Gallen, and the perpetrator was his older brother, Sean. An argument had erupted between the siblings, during which Sean, under the influence of prohibited substances, grabbed a firearm and discharged 3 bullets into his younger brother. Police recognized the shooter's name as Sean had previously been detained as a suspect in the double homicide on a beach, but was released due to a lack of evidence. Since then, he had been in police sites twice for property damage and making threats, but had only received fines. It was also discovered that the detainee was an avid hunter and had a hobby of crafting knives and other bladed weapons. Those around him described him as antisocial, aggressive, and unpredictable. After taking his brother's life, Sean attempted to flee but was almost immediately apprehended. Law enforcement then decided to thoroughly reinvestigate this man's potential involvement in a couple's perpetration from 13 years prior. His personal social media page revealed much, where he posted pictures of his substantial weapon collection and discussed supposed telepathic and extrasensory abilities. According to his posts, he believed he was on a special mission, receiving assignments from space. This seemed like delusions of a disturbed mind, and police suspected Sean indeed had serious mental disorders. He stubbornly refused to cooperate with the investigation, spoke nonsensically, and insisted on his innocence. However, when detectives checked the personal messages on his deceased brother's page, they found something intriguing. Back in 2006, when a $50,000 reward was offered for information on the double homicide case. Sean's former girlfriend had messaged Seamus, suggesting she could claim the reward by turning in her ex-boyfriend. They both knew everything but kept silent. Unfortunately, questioning either was no longer possible since the brother had been shot and the woman had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. An unexpected confession. Initially, Sean denied any involvement and refused to speak, but when shown the printouts of the messages between his former girlfriend and his brother, he surprisingly confessed and began to give a detailed account. His narrative not only surprised, but shocked law enforcement. Despite more than 13 years passing since the double homicide, Gowan remembered the details of that night vividly. That evening, he had left his house with a Marlin rifle, intending to hunt in a wooded area. He aimlessly wandered for a couple of hours before descending a trail to a wild beach, which, he claimed, was a spot to encounter boars. As he walked along the shore, he spotted 2 bright sleeping bags. Approaching closer, he discovered a young man and woman sound asleep inside. He stood watching them for several minutes, then suddenly heard voices in his head commanding him to end their lives. Sean claimed this was the mission from space he could not ignore. He placed the barrel of his rifle almost against the young man's head and pulled the trigger. The sound woke the young woman, but before she could comprehend the situation, a second shot ended her life as well. He decided to collect the casings and carried them away in a beer can he had emptied while descending to the beach. Later, according to him, he tossed the can into some bushes in his father's backyard, where he went to give the rifle to his father and asked him to hide it. His elderly father asked no questions and simply buried the weapon in the dirt floor of the cellar in his old barn. Remarkably, Sean's claims were verified. The rifle was found at the site of the now collapsed barn, and the beer can with the casing still rested in the overgrown bushes in the backyard. The fact that the murderer's father had passed away in 2009 and his property had since fallen into disrepair and abandonment helped preserve these items. It turned out that the bottle found on the beach had no connection to the crime and was mistakenly considered as evidence. Forensic psychiatric evaluation, Sean Gowan blamed the voices in his head, which he claimed ordered him to commit acts of violence, and asserted that he was not aware of his actions. His defense attorneys also insisted that Sean was mentally ill and unfit to stand trial. It was up to qualified psychiatrists to determine the truth of these claims. The evaluation revealed that the accused did indeed suffer from a range of mental disorders, exacerbated by the effects of alcohol and prohibited substances. However, at the time of the crime, he acted deliberately, carefully planning each step. Sean was fully aware of how to proceed and how to cover his tracks to avoid police detection. This was precisely why he first ended the life of the young man, knowing that if anything went awry, the woman would not be able to resist. For the same reason, he took the casings with him and prudently gave the rifle to his father, asking him to hide it. According to the psychiatrists, although Gowan had mental deviations, he was competent to stand trial and be held accountable for his actions. What was surprising in this complex case was that his parents, brother, and former girlfriend knew, or at least suspected, that he had committed the double homicide, yet none of them had turned him over to the police. Trial and sentence. The trial of the accused took place in the spring of 2019, nearly 15 years after the brutal act against the couple. On June 17th of that year, Sean Gowan was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 94 years for the end of his own brother's life in 2017. The convicted man is now serving his sentence in a special prison unit designated for particularly dangerous inmates with mental disorders. He continues to claim that he hears voices and behaves aggressively. Hence, he is kept under special surveillance to prevent him from harming himself or anyone else nearby. Lastly, it should be noted that the motive for the double homicide was never established. Sean simply saw the couple sleeping on the beach and decided to end their lives.
Nancy Lagerquist. On the night of Sunday,
July 1st, 1990, Nancy Lagerquist, an 87-year-old resident at Riverside Healthcare Center, was last seen alive. At around 3:30 a.m., a care worker witnessed the elderly woman sound asleep in her bed. She was not distressed and appeared peaceful. The care worker closed her bedroom door and moved on to the next room. Nancy had been a resident at Riverside since December of 1988. Born in Hamilton, Montana in 1902, she graduated high school at the age of 18 and spent much of her life working as an executive secretary. Nancy was an active member of the Missoula Business and Professional Women's Club prior to her retirement. She never married, had no children, and had little in the way of relatives at the time of her death. Those family members, a sister, 2 nieces and 3 nephews, didn't live near the care home. By all accounts, Nancy lived an ordinary life in the care home. She was unable to walk, and so she required around-the-clock assistance. There was nothing about her background to suggest there was a target on her back at the time of her death. At 4:30 a.m., 1 hour after Nancy was checked on at Riverside on July 1st, a worker checked on her room once more. This time, however, the alarm was raised. The 87-year-old was gone. The 5 employees on shift scattered across the building in an attempt to locate the elderly woman, but there was no sign of her. 11 minutes later, at 4:41 a.m., the police were alerted to Nancy's disappearance. Law enforcement promptly arrived on the scene, accompanied by search and rescue teams. They carried out an extensive search of the home and the surrounding area. The residence was located along the Clark Fork River, and boats manned by police officers were dispatched along the water. At 6:30 a.m., the search was called off. Authorities had found Nancy dead near the riverbank, about 30 minutes downstream from Riverside. She had been murdered in a manner that was described by police as ritualistic. The circumstances of her death were violent, stemming from sexual assault with an object. Her body was then dumped into the water. To investigators working on the case, it soon became apparent that they would have their work cut out for them. The fact that Nancy's body had been put in the water had washed away any traces of forensic evidence, and her diaper has never been located. The police have never put forward a theory about the weapon used in the murder, and it, too, has never been found. Detectives soon theorized the culprit had entered and exited through Nancy's bedroom window, which faced the river, as the screen had been cut. However, the perpetrator had managed not to leave behind any evidence on the window, or sill, or in the rest of the bedroom. Furthermore, none of the alarms had gone off at any of the home's entrances, and all were in working order. It's unclear if the home was dusted for prints, but given the amount of staff, residents, and guests coming and going from the home, it would have been a very arduous task if it had. The only lead in the case was a man seen by a member of staff at around 4 a.m. walking through the car park of the neighboring Missoula Athletic Club, away from the river and towards East Broadway Street. He is described as being white, between the ages of 30 and 40, and weighing around 180 to 200 pounds. He has light brown, collar-length hair, a moustache, and brown-rimmed glasses, and was wearing an untucked white and brown striped t-shirt, tan button front shorts, and white tennis shoes with white socks. His t-shirt was longer at the back than the front. This man was never considered a suspect, but was wanted for questioning. However, it's unclear if he ever made contact with the police or was even identified by them. Reportedly, the description led to the police becoming inundated with reports. Due to Nancy's minimal family ties, a family connection was quickly ruled out, after which the authorities turned their attention to staff members. Staff at the care home would be familiar with its layout and its security measures and would know who was best to target. Investigators felt that the murder could well be an inside job and homed in on one male staff member in particular. He was eventually cleared of being involved, but left the care home less than a month later. It is unclear why he left. After ruling out the staff member, the police began to look at the possibility that the crime was the work of an outsider. They noted that security focused on the doors to the home, not the windows, and speculated that Nancy was picked because she was in a room facing onto the river and was not targeted for any reason more specific than that. They interviewed a man named James Bailey on multiple occasions, but eventually dropped in as a suspect. Eventually, detectives looked back at the witness statements they'd collected regarding any other potentially suspicious deaths in the home. One nurse had drawn their attention to the demise of an 86-year-old woman named Bertha Scott, an Alzheimer's sufferer who was discovered dead in her bed on May 2, 1990. She was put into restraints at night to stop her from wandering off, and because she'd suffered from heart disease, her death was assumed to be from natural causes. Neither the staff nor her family felt her demise was suspicious, except for the one nurse who had noted a bruise on Bertha's neck. She was buried without autopsy. Around the time of Bertha's death, the care home staff had also noticed that there had been some tampering with the windows of the physical therapy room, although nothing ever really came of this. On the back of the nurse's comments, the police decided to exhume Bertha's body and double-check her cause of death. Her family was shocked when the police announced that she had actually been raped before being strangled to death. Bertha's life was rather different from Nancy's. She had been born in Pennsylvania in 1904 and was married 20 years later. She had moved to Missoula just 2 years before her death so that she could be closer to one of her surviving children. 4 of her 6 children had died before her, though she was succeeded by a vast number of grandchildren. During Bertha's medical examination, it was discovered that semen had been left behind. Although a sample was collected, it was too degraded to produce a DNA profile which would help the police find her killer. From here, both cases grew cold. In 1992, a man at another care home was arrested for sexually assaulting one of the residents. However, he was in prison at the time of the murders. The police also suspected Lloyd Chase Allen of being involved that same year, but he too was behind bars when the crimes were committed. In 2002, the Missoulian reported that several of the care home residents had spoken of a man who roamed the halls at night, but staff had never been sure if he was real or not because the residents' memories and testimony were often unreliable. It's possible this man was real and that there are more cases like Bertha's where residents were killed, but it was deemed that they had died from natural causes. However, without DNA evidence, a confession, or further investigation, it seems likely we will never see this case solved. Caser stops pretty places. Born on August 14, 2001, Caser stops pretty places and her large family were members of various Native American reservations in Montana, including the Crow and North Cheyenne nations. An extremely athletic individual, Caser was fond of basketball, football, running cross-country, and wrestling. In her teen years, she had performed in several plays at Hardin High School and participated in the school's choir. She had a big heart and was described as compassionate and loving by all those who knew her. She could often be found tending to stray animals in her spare time. But Caser's biggest ambition was to become a performer. She wanted to act and sing, and the future looked bright for the determined team until her life was horrifically ripped away shortly after her 18th birthday. Caser was last seen on August 24, 2019, in Hardin, a rural town less than half a mile off the Crow Reservation, where she lived with her legal guardian and grandmother, Yolanda Frazier. It's unclear where the teen was aiming to go, but one thing is for certain: she never returned home. She had planned the following day to meet with her mother to visit North Dakota, but she failed to turn up for this get-together. Her family quickly noticed that their texts were going unanswered, their phone calls simply rang and rang, and that Caser was not active on social media, which was perhaps the most telling clue of all that something was wrong. Later that day, Caser's aunt, Percilia Bolteo, went to report her niece missing to the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, but was told there was a mandatory waiting period before the report could be filed. This was later proven to be a lie. In Montana, anyone under the age of 21 is considered a minor, and an Amber Alert should have been issued. Instead, it wasn't until August 27th that Caser's family was able to file the missing persons report. The police reportedly told Percilia that the teen was probably out with her friends. There is no record, but following her disappearance, law enforcement attempted to search for the teenager. They also didn't hand out flyers, which may have helped trace her final movements and prompt witnesses to step forward. Hasilia felt that because of Kaysera's troubled past and history of running away, law enforcement didn't take her case seriously. Although much of the 18-year-old's past remains a mystery to the public, it has been noted in recent articles that she had some issues with alcohol. In April of 2019, she was found unresponsive at school because she was heavily intoxicated and she had to be rushed to the ER. Then, on August 29th, a passing jogger discovered Kaysera's body by a woodpile in the back garden of a home at the intersection of Mitchell Avenue and Rangeview Drive, in the Hardin suburb where she was last seen alive 5 days earlier. The homeowner was out of town when her body was found and had no connection to the teenager. Kaysera's family were not notified immediately that a body had been found. Reports of a teenager's remains being discovered began circulating on social media, and the family caught wind of the rumors. They began to fear the worst. Hasilia went to the scene to ID the body, but was turned away without being able to view the remains, and the local media were not alerted to the fact that a body had been found. Kaysera's mother, along with Yolanda, then went to the local mortuary so they could view the body on September 1st. But they were informed that the body didn't belong to the missing team, and so the family continued the search. It wasn't until 10 days later it was revealed that the body was in fact Kaysera's. The coroner ruled that she had perished on August 26th and that her death was suspicious. Her remains were already badly decomposed, so the cause of death could not be determined. Asphyxiation could not be ruled out. Following this discovery, the teenager's family kept the pressure on law enforcement to investigate the death. On September 12th, Kaysera's mother, Geraldine, was told by Terry Bullis, the county coroner and the owner of Bullis Mortuary, that her daughter's remains had to be cremated in order to be returned to the family. Despite the fact this was against the family's cultural beliefs and would remove the possibility of further examinations of the body. Furthermore, the family had wanted the Dahl Funeral Home in Billings, Montana to handle funeral arrangements, but Bullis made them use his business and ordered Kaysera's cremation before other family members arrived in Hardin. On September 14th, the family located the site where Kaysera's body was discovered with the help of relatives who lived nearby. They had attempted to visit the area a few days earlier, but were unable to because the scene was no longer sealed off and there was no demarcation of where the body was found. At the scene, they performed a ritual ceremony and noted that the area was very visible and had high traffic. A neighbor, Jason Cummings, who had found the body, told the family that the police had removed Kaysera's phone from her pocket and that he had told them to charge it so her family could be contacted, although they appeared to ignore this suggestion. He, too, had questioned why the crime scene hadn't been sanctioned off to prevent contamination. 5 days later, on September 19th, the family alerted the media to the case. The Billings Gazette told them that they called the sheriff's office daily for any crime updates and hadn't been made aware of the case. That same day, Yolanda, along with Kaysera's father Alan, went to meet up with Captain Mike Fuss of the Bighorn Sheriff County's office. When they asked why Fuss had not made contact with the family or returned their calls, he told them he had been preoccupied with other cases. When they asked why the crime scene had not been sealed off, he explained that if investigators arrived on the scene before uniformed officers, then they did not need to seal off the scene. According to Fuss, the scene was only sealed off if officers arrive first. Then Yolanda and Alan asked why law enforcement had not charged and turned on Kaysera's phone. Fuss was reportedly surprised that the family knew about this, and he said that the battery was dead, and so they didn't attempt to use it. Kaysera's family countered this by noting that they could have charged the phone and looked at her recent communications, but Fuss said they couldn't get into that phone and that not even the FBI could. Furthermore, Fuss implied that Kaysera had died from alcohol poisoning where she was found, and seemed angry when the family told him they were offering a $5,000 reward for any information. He also revealed that the original investigator on the case, Jeremy Middlestead, had stepped down because he, quote, couldn't handle it. Notably, Kaysera's family were not interviewed by law enforcement until this time. They also spoke with the Bighorn County Attorney, Jay Harris, who told the family that the coroner, Terry Bullis, had a conflict of interest in his position as a funeral home business and the county medical examiner. Harris also noted that bullets tended to quickly determine the cause of death as exposure to alcohol and natural causes under his charge as coroner. However, Harris was otherwise reportedly brusque and rude towards the family, and failed to provide them with clear answers to any of their questions, at one point telling them, "How do you know that nothing is being done?" On the 23rd, the family were notified that no missing persons report had been filed for Caesara, and that her name was not in the missing persons database. A week later, the FBI declined to take the case on, stating they needed more evidence that Caesara was murdered on the reservation. Interestingly, just days before Caesara vanished, she had filmed a video of several police officers beating her 15-year-old wheelchair-bound brother and uploaded it to social media. The incident involved several deputies from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, leading to several officers being reprimanded. It is believed one of the officers who responded to the scene where Caesara's body was found was one of those involved in the beating. This has sparked much speculation that the police were involved in her death or opted not to investigate in retaliation for Caesara attempting to hold them responsible for their actions. In August of 2021, 2 years after the teenager's death, a fresh report revealed that 4 witnesses had been discovered. The statements of these individuals are not fully consistent, but generally describe a series of events which led to an argument outside of a home on Rangeview Drive at around 3 a.m. on August 26, 2019, involving Caesara and 3 other unarmed individuals, including a 17-year-old girl, 19-year-old woman, and 23-year-old man. Some reports mentioned that Caesara had been hanging out at the house and that an occupant had purchased alcohol for her. Reportedly, her blood alcohol level at the time of her demise was 0.149. The argument that had occurred that night led to another nearby homeowner setting off his car alarm, hoping it would cause the group to flee. They did, scattering in different directions. Caesara was last seen heading towards the area where her body was later found. The new report also mentioned that no foreign DNA was discovered underneath her fingernails and that she was diagnosed with asthma shortly before her disappearance. Caesara's case is still unsolved. If you have any information about her disappearance and subsequent death, then you can contact the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office at 406-665-97. Have you heard the story about the nuclear power plant employee from Springfield who is having problems with his wife? No, we're not talking about Homer Simpson. We're talking about this guy. Sounds legit, right? Wrong. What you heard just now was the voice of an extremely talented liar. In 1995, Mark Winger, a nuclear power plant technician in Springfield, Illinois, murdered his wife by beating her to death with a hammer. In an even darker twist to the story, he framed someone else for the murder, married their child's nanny shortly afterwards, and got away with murder for nearly 4 years. So how did he do it? Hi, and welcome to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today I'm going to take you guys through another case with the most insane twists you've ever heard. In June of 1995, it seemed like life couldn't possibly get any better for Mark and Donna Winger. The nuclear technician and his wife had been happily married for several years, and they had just adopted a newborn baby girl named Bailey. Donna was the oldest of 3 sisters in what they described as an incredibly close-knit family. The Dreschers grew to love Mark too. He was smart, Jewish. He was attractive and he was fun, Donna's sister Jenny Levin told the media. Donna just felt like she had found her person. After Mark and Donna Winger were married in 1989, he was offered a job, and the newlyweds settled in Springfield, Illinois. We always joked about the fact when one sister marries, that husband marries 3 sisters, Levin said. We shared our lives with Mark. Donna was working as an operating room technician and Mark was a nuclear engineer. Donna couldn't have been happier. The only thing she would have liked to was to have a child, her stepfather, Ira Drescher, said. Donna's mother, Sarah Jane Drescher, said her daughter was overwhelmed when she learned that she could not get pregnant. But then one day while working at the hospital, a doctor told Donna that a teenager was looking to put her baby up for adoption. Adopting the child was an easy decision for her. She looked at me with tears when she said, "Michelle, I knew it the minute they put the baby into my arms. She has always been mine," Donna's sister Michelle Hansen said. The Wingers welcomed baby Bailey into their home on June 1st, 1995. Donna's family said the couple loved their new roles as parents. They seemed to have all the makings of a long and happy life together. Mark was just as excited to become a dad as Donna was to become a mom, Hansen said. Donna had met the woman who would eventually become her best friend, Deanne Schultz, at the hospital. And with the arrival of Bailey, the two bonded over motherhood. But then everything turned dark. In August 1995, Donna took baby Bailey on a trip to Hollywood, Florida, to visit Donna's family. Her mother had just dropped the two of them off at the airport and hired a driver to pick them up in St. Louis, Missouri, and drive them back to Springfield. So after the visit, the two flew into St. Louis Airport and hopped in a cab driven by Roger Harrington with a 2-hour ride back to Springfield. During the course of the drive, Harrington reportedly began flirting with Donna and talking about drugs and orgies. Detective Charlie Cox, a police officer who investigated Donna's death, later said, "This gentleman started opening up to Donna about issues he was having. He had a voice in his head named Dom. Dom would tell him to do bad things. Recently, Dom was telling him to hurt people." After Donna safely arrived home with Bailey, she called the transit company to make a formal complaint about Harrington's behavior, and the driver was suspended. Cox later said that the driver started flirting with Donna, telling her he liked older women and even invited her to attend what he described as one of his sex parties. Donna had told her family that the ride was terrifying because he was driving erratically at 75 miles per hour. After the harrowing ride, Donna had been the victim of some strange phone calls, Weinhoft said. The family had believed that the driver had been stalking her and was a danger. Donna called the limousine company to file a complaint, and Harrington was suspended. Mark argued his wife to write down the story in case they might need it. Police later found the note describing Donna's harrowing ride in her handwriting at the crime scene. Donna also told Mark about the experience, and though he played a part of the supportive husband and helped her file the complaint, it turned out that he had ulterior motives for doing so. Just days later, Mark invited Harrington to their home, perhaps under the pretense of helping him get his job back. On the 29th of August 1995, the cab driver wrote Mark's name, address, and the time on a scrap of paper in his car, drove to the Wingers' home, walked inside with a coffee cup and a pack of cigarettes, and was shot twice in the head. Mark Winger then called 911 and told the dispatcher he'd just shot a man who was killing his wife. He informed police that he'd been walking on the treadmill in the basement when he heard a commotion upstairs. He grabbed his gun, went to investigate, and found Harrington swinging a hammer at Donna. In an effort to defend his wife, he'd shot the man twice. Police arrived on the scene to find that both Donna and Harrington still had a weak pulse. Mark was in a back bedroom rolling back and forth in total shock. When former Springfield Police Detective Charlie Cox arrived at the Wingers' home, he remembered they could see the victims from the front door. Donna was clinging to life, said Sangamon County Assistant State Attorney Steve Weinholt. She had been hit no less than 7 times in the head with a hammer. The second victim, a white man, had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head, but still had a pulse when police arrived, said Weinholt. It was quite chaotic, Cox said. I knew that they were probably going to be transporting the victim soon, so I wanted to try and get identification on the male suspect. Cox found the man's wallet and was able to identify him as Roger Harrington. Police recovered a bloody hammer near the 2 bodies and found Mark's .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun, a yellow mug, and a pack of cigarettes on the same dining table. They also noticed that Harrington's car had been parked against traffic, facing the wrong direction. At the crime scene, Cox said Mark was very upset and very emotional, and that he repeatedly asked who the man he'd killed was. Cox avoided identifying Harrington and tried to calm Mark down. As police combed through the scene, Mark asked police if the intruder's name was Roger. Cox confirmed that it was. Mark was shocked and he said, "Oh my gosh, that's the man who's been harassing my wife this week," Cox said. Cox, who was familiar with Harrington after he'd lived in a trailer park owned by Cox, believed Harrington might have snapped. "I knew him as a very volatile type subject. He and his wife rented a trailer for me, Cox said. Knowing what I knew about Mr. Harrington in the past, how quick he was to anger, I thought that very well he could have gone over there to try to get his job back. There's a hammer laying right there on the table. He picks it up and goes into a rage, then the husband shoots the bad guy. Tragically, both victims succumbed to their injuries. After learning about Donna's previous run-in with Harrington and listening to Mark's version of events, the police closed the case within days, listing Roger Harrington as the culprit. Because once police examined the scene and listened to Mark's story, detectives concluded that he had acted in self-defense. The case was closed in about 48 hours, Weinholt said. But Harrington's family insisted from the beginning that their son was harmless. He was no troublemaker. He was a good kid. He wouldn't even strike at anybody, his mother, Helen Harrington, said. I don't think he would hurt anybody, and I don't think he was crazy. So it seemed like Mark Winger was going to get away with murder. Donna's mother spoke to the media about the evening, and the family received the news of her daughter's murder. It was 4 a.m, and I said, "Jenny, it's Mom. Something terrible has happened," Sarah Jane Drescher said of her call to Levin. "We sat there in my room, just crying at this unimaginable loss," Levin said. In the following months, Donna's mother and sister took turns traveling to Illinois to help take care of Bailey. "I loved Mark because he loved Donna, and that's what was important to me," Sarah Jane Drescher said. "But I had to be very careful because I did not want to ruin my relationship with him, because I did not want to ruin my relationship with the baby. I wanted to be a grandma, and Bailey made me a grandma." Mark was now a single father raising his infant daughter on his own. Donna's family initially flew to Illinois to help out, but they couldn't stay, and they suggested Mark hire a nanny. In January 1996, he met 23-year-old Rebecca Simic, who was searching for a nanny job in the area. Rebecca told reporters, "It just felt like Bailey was the one that really needed me the most. She had been through so much already at the age of 3 months." Rebecca was wonderful with Bailey, and even Donna's family agreed that she was like an angel sent to help Mark. While she felt a little uncomfortable in the house, where 2 people had died violently, she was dedicated to giving Bailey a good childhood despite the trauma of losing her mother. "I didn't want to like Rebecca, but it was hard not to like her," Levin said. "Seeing her with Bailey, there was really nothing bad we could say about her." Meanwhile, Rebecca's role at Mark's home had begun to evolve. When you live with someone and you're taking care of a child together, it's very easy to kind of play house, Rebecca said later on. Rebecca told the media that she was blown away by what the infant had been through in such a short time. "Mark made me feel like I was like an angel sent to him from God or Donna, and it was my purpose to make this family whole again," Rebecca said. She lost 2 mothers by the time she was 3 months old, and she was so smiley, Rebecca said. "I wanted to get in there and say, I'm going to help and I'm going to make this little girl's life better." Mark helped Rebecca feel at ease in her new role. After a few months, the two found themselves sharing conversation and a glass of wine at the end of a long day. And then one thing led to another as their relationship turned intimate. Within the year, Rebecca was pregnant with Mark's child. The couple eloped in Hawaii in October 1996, just 14 months after Donna's death. "I remember asking him how he could move on so quickly," Rebecca later recalled. "And he explained to me that when you have a good marriage, it's natural for you to just want that again." Rebecca said Mark had told her he wasn't able to have children, so she said she was very surprised when she found out she was pregnant with his child only months after moving in. "Obviously, I wasn't careful. It was just kind of a shock," she said. Mark, on the other hand, was thrilled, Rebecca recalled. "It felt like it was a victory to him," she said. "Mark put pressure on me to marry him and have children with him." Rebecca said that Mark, who was Jewish when they met, even started going to church with her. She said he told her they could raise a family in a Christian home. "I would be honored to be your husband and blessed if you were my wife," Mark wrote in a letter to Rebecca. Mark's rabbi, Michael Datz, asked him about his change in faith, and he said that Mark explained, "Judaism is just too difficult and unforgiving." Rabbi Datz didn't understand, asking, "Mark, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you need forgiveness for?" He said Mark didn't respond. But then it seemed like Mark was trying almost a little too hard to leave the past behind. 16 months after his wife's death, Mark told Sarah Jane Drescher that he was going to sell the house where her daughter Donna had died and buy another one just outside of town. He and Rebecca had started a family of their own, and he started cutting ties with Donna's parents. I received a letter from Mark one day saying to me I could not be called Grandma, Sarah Jane Drusher said. I wrote him back and I begged him, please let her call me Grandma. And he said, I'm sorry, there's no way I am going to allow her to call you Grandma, and that's the way it is. Sarah said she mourned that loss for a long time. Bailey Simic, now 25, told reporters that her grandmother and grandfather, Ira Drescher, would send a birthday card to her every year. I always remember asking my mom, who's Sarah Jane and Ira, she said. My mom would always explain, like, those are Donna's parents, and they just want to let you know that, like, they love you and that they remember you. Eventually, Mark sold the house where Donna had died and moved with his new wife to the suburbs outside of Springfield. Things seemed great on the surface. They had 3 children together, and Rebecca raised Bailey as her daughter. Though chaotic, their life seemed almost perfect. Mark was a loving partner and a very involved father. That would all change quite soon. One day in early 1909, when Mark was feeling ill, Rebecca took him to the emergency room in the hospital where Donna had worked before her death. There they saw Donna's best friend and co-worker, Deanne Schultz. She seemed upset to see Mark, and Rebecca remembered that Deanne had acted strangely when she first came on Bailey's nanny, as if she were anxious to stay involved in Bailey's life. After they returned home, Mark commented that may not be the last they heard from Deanne. He was right. In February 1999, Deanne dropped a bombshell on the police, revealing that she and Mark had been having an affair before Donna's death. She said that at one point, he'd remarked to her that things would be easier for them if Donna was dead. She told them that after Donna's fateful ride with Roger Harrington, Mark said that he needed to get that driver to the house. All you'd need to do is find the body, he told her. Deanne never thought Mark was serious, but when Donna turned up dead soon after, she knew he had done it. Mark had threatened her not to tell anyone about the things he'd said, and she'd attempted suicide several times while struggling with her guilt. After seeing him in the hospital, she decided she couldn't keep quiet any longer. After hearing Deanne's story, police decided to take a closer look at the evidence from the day of the murders. The more they thought about what they'd once assumed was an open and shut case, the more questions they had. Why were there no signs of forced entry into the Winger home that August day? Why would Roger Harrington bring his cup of coffee and cigarettes into the house with him if he'd planned to attack Donna? And why would he use the Winger's hammer as a weapon when he had a tire iron and a knife in his car? At that point, investigators came upon 3 never-before-seen Polaroid photos taken the day of the murders. They'd been with the evidence collected in a civil suit Mark had filed against the transportation company that had employed Harrington. The position of the bodies in the photos showed that Mark's version of events were not possible. Mark Winger had stated that Roger Harrington was kneeling right next to Donna Winger's head and he was beating her with a hammer, Weinhoft explained. He stated that he shot him and that the man fell backward so that his feet remained near Donna's head. In reality, the Polaroid photographs show the exact opposite. Blood spatter experts agreed. Cox later told the media, I was ashamed of the way the investigation went. I heard Roger Harrington's family. I ran his name through hell for no reason. I mean, he was an innocent victim. It had become clear that Mark was the real murderer behind the scenes the whole time. Rebecca Simic was left to make sense of the tragedy. She had no idea what Mark was capable of, and afterward, she moved her 4 children out of Springfield to feel safer. While Mark had tried to keep Bailey away from Donna's family, Rebecca encouraged them to be reunited. We'd been hurt a lot by the same person, Rebecca said, but it didn't break us. Donna's family and Rebecca spoke to reporters about the horrific realization that Mark was a manipulative killer hiding behind the mask of a brilliant engineer and a kind, loving husband and father. In December 1999, more than 4 years after the murders, the Springfield State Journal-Register ran an article based on allegations in the civil lawsuit that Mark had arranged the murder himself and killed both his wife and Harrington. The allegations were based on a blood spatter expert hired by BART Transportation in the case after the arrest of their employee Harrington. Everything came to a head. It changed everything, Rebecca said of the article. I mean, it went from Mark as the hero who was defending his wife, this noble stand-up guy that every man wanted to pat on the back, to a manipulative, deviant murderer. As the detectives continued their reinvestigation, they learned that Harrington's roommate, Susan Collins, had initially told police that someone asked to meet with Harrington on the day of the murders and that she'd seen Harrington on the phone arranging that meeting. Inside Harrington's car, they found a note written on a bank deposit slip with Mark's name, his address, and the time to be there. Roger Harrington was not an intruder, but rather he was lured into that home by Mark Winger, Weinhoft said. Deanne Schultz's cooperation with police and evidence that raised questions about Mark's story prompted the voluntary dismissal of the civil suit against Bark Transportation. "I didn't see it coming," Rebecca said. "I didn't know that this whole investigation was brewing. I never thought the whole time that they thought my husband was a diabolical murderer." A warrant was issued for Mark's arrest, and he was taken into custody while at work. "I had made plans to go to McDonald's Playland," Rebecca recalled. "We were there and I got a phone call, and it was Mark's secretary, and she told me that Mark had just been arrested. I was just sick. Like my whole body kind of went numb, and I just couldn't believe it. I was shaking so badly, and I just remembered feeling so scared. I felt that I owed it to him and to my kids to just stand by him," she said. Hanson, Donna's sister, said she didn't feel relieved following Mark's arrest. "I still wanted to believe he was innocent," she said. "Here's this person that I know in handcuffs, and what's gonna happen?" Bailey was just 6 years old at the time of Mark's arrest. She said no longer having her father home was scary. "I just remember everyone just trying to remain calm and kind of, at the time, being like, Dad's just going away for a while and that he'll be back soon," she said. But that was no longer possible. On August 23, 2001, Mark Winger was indicted for the murders of Donna Winger and Roger Harrington. At the trial in May 2002, a visibly shaky Deanne testified against Mark. The court granted her immunity in exchange for her testimony, though there was no evidence linking her to anything other than keeping Mark's terrible secret. Mark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. One of the key points the prosecution had to prove was that Harrington had gone to the house to meet with the Wingers, not to commit a murder. They presented the cigarettes and coffee mug that he'd brought inside, as well as the weapons he'd left in his car and the note with Mark's name and address. Mark's attorney argued that Harrington was mentally ill, that he behaved erratically, and that these traits indicated he was capable of murder. When prosecutors presented the Polaroid showing the position of the bodies before they were removed from the scene, Mark's attorney argued throughout the trial that first responders could have moved the bodies. "It's our belief that Roger comes to the house, he's allowed into the home," now retired Detective Jim Graham said. "There were no signs of forced entry, and he was executed at that time." Hearing the gunshot, Donna Winger then comes from the bathroom to investigate. He then beats his wife to death with a hammer. Mark then calls 911. In the 911 call, someone can be heard moaning in the background. When Mark tells the operator he can hear his baby crying and hangs up. He had told the operator there was a bullet in Harrington's head, but when police arrived, Harrington had been shot twice. Deanne also gave damning testimony at the trial, saying that Mark told her it would be easier if Donna just died. "I thought it was crazy talk," she said during her cross-examination. After a chance meeting years later, Deanne testified that she confronted Mark in the hopes of gathering information and asked him how he lived with himself, and that he'd replied that he had found Jesus Christ and was forgiven. She said he warned her that if she ever said anything, they would both be in trouble. "I didn't think that anybody would believe her," Rebecca said. "I just thought if Mark truly did that, she would have come forward right away." Mark's defense argued that Deanne was emotionally unstable and just a woman who had been scorned. Deanne Schultz's testimony was able to demonstrate that, in reality, Mark was obviously unhappy, unfaithful, and had specifically talked about wanting to kill his wife, Weinhoft said. Schultz was granted immunity for her testimony, he added. There was no direct evidence that directly linked Deanne to actively participating in this crime. In the end, she was such a valuable witness as it relates to presenting the motive. After a trial that lasted 3 weeks, the jury found Mark Winger guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. Rebecca said she believed he would be going home with them. After the verdict, she said the words "guilty" rang through her head and that she wanted the earth to open up and swallow me. Sarah Jane Drescher and her daughters, Donna's sisters, were with her when they heard the verdict. "The 3 of us just embraced and cried," she said. And the story gets even more twisted, because 4 years later, Mark was also sentenced to an additional 35 years in prison when he tried to hire a hitman to kill Deanne or testifying against him. He even attempted to put out a hit against a childhood friend who had refused to pay his bail. Helen Harrington was relieved and grateful that her son had been vindicated of Donna's murder. "We knew that Roger was innocent, and it finally got proven," she said. "He was branded a murderer at the time, but then all this came to an end." The police also had to come to terms with the faulty initial investigation. "I was ashamed of the way the investigation went," Cox said. "I hurt Roger Harrington's family. I ran his name through hell for no reason. I mean, he was an innocent victim." The police department had too hastily closed the case and turned a blind eye to some red flags, and to right such a wrong, it felt great, Bram added. But Rebecca said there wasn't any closure for her or her family. "When we lose someone, we gather. We have a funeral," Rebecca shared. "But when someone goes to prison, well, what do? You're just kind of left with this emptiness and this hole that you can't really have closure with that." "It wasn't just him being sentenced to life," she said. "We were sentenced to a life of a father in prison." Bailey Simic says she missed having her father around while growing up. "It was really hard being in school, seeing all the other kids had their dads and that relationship," she said. "And now suddenly, I couldn't just go to my dad's room or have him pick us up from school or anything like that." Ben Simic was only a year old when his dad went to prison. "I can look at the pictures and look at myself and say, that kid has no idea. He was way too young to know anything that was going on," he said. Rebecca had to move out of Springfield with her kids, and the home that she'd bought with Mark was foreclosed. She had been a stay-at-home mom for 7 years, so she had no option but to file for bankruptcy. "I didn't have anything to give my kids. Everything had been taken away. All I had was love," she said. Rebecca never remarried as far as we know. She raised all 4 of the children on her own. And Bailey has since reunited with Donna's family. "It was so incredible to see that there's this whole big family that loves me, and Sarah Jane still has my baby picture on her kitchen counter with all of her other grandkids, even though we've been gone for so long," she said. "We've been hurt a lot by the same person, but it didn't break us," Rebecca said. Although Sarah Jane Drescher says there will never be closure for the murder of her daughter, the family has worked together to set up Donna's Fund, which is a part of Women in Distress, an organization that works to provide shelter for women trying to escape abuse. "I think her legacy will live on through people that we help," Levin said, "and through the beautiful memories that we have of her." So what do you think of this crazy, twisted case of murder uncovered? Would Mark Winger still be walking scot-free today if his former lover, Deanne Schultz, hadn't developed a guilty conscience? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. And don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe for more in-depth coverage of some of the most manipulative murders of all time. Stay safe, friends. Until next time. Hello, friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Ayla Reynolds. Ayla Reynolds was born in Waterville, Maine on April 4th, 2010. A beautiful girl with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a captivating smile, she adored music and dancing. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin Dietro, had a brief romance in 2009, leading to Trista's pregnancy. Though initially surprised, Justin's resemblance to Ayla was undeniable. A paternity test in 2010 made him accept his parenthood. Consequently, in December, he was ordered to provide child support. Trista and Justin didn't have a custody agreement, but Trista, who lived in Portland, had primary custody of Ayla, thanks to an arrangement between them. Only in mid-2011, after Ayla's first birthday, did Justin start having visits with her. He lived an hour and a half away, and the encounters were during the day and very brief. They agreed he could occasionally take Ayla with him, but never overnight. After giving birth to Ayla, Trista became pregnant again with her fiancé Raymond's child. In 2011, Ayla welcomed a baby brother, Raymond Jr. However, Trista's life took a dramatic turn on October 13, 2011, when she had a run-in with Child Services. They issued her an ultimatum: get substance abuse treatment or risk losing custody of her children. Trista opted for rehab, leaving Ayla and Raymond Jr. in the care of her mom and sister, determined to reunite with them and avoid losing them permanently. By October 2011, Justin had met with Ayla around 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista's funeral, on October 17th, Justin and his family suddenly decided to seek custody of Ayla. Justin's mother, Phoebe DiPetro, got in touch with Child Protective Services and was granted permission to take Ayla into their care. The authorities quickly informed Trista's relatives of their decision. However, when Ayla's aunt was told she had to hand Ayla over, she strongly opposed the decision, alleging that Justin had a history of abusing the child. The officials countered that a father's custody rights take precedence over those of an aunt. Once permission was granted, Justin and his family went to pick up Ayla from her Aunt Jessica's house, but they didn't know the address. Child protection officials provided the location, and a police officer, Charles Weaver, accompanied Justin and his mother to the house. The paternal grandmother waited in the car while Justin and the officer went to the door. When they arrived, Jessica begged the officer not to take Ayla away and warned that she wouldn't give her up willingly. The officer noted that Ayla seemed happy and carefree at first, laughing and playing. However, Jessica pointed out that Ayla's behavior changed dramatically when Justin approached. As soon as Ayla saw her father, she burst into tears and tried to get away from him. Despite this, the officer took Ayla from Jessica and handed her over to Justin. The child struggled and screamed, even trying to bite the officer when she was placed in her father's arms. Jessica told Officer Charles that Ayla was terrified of Justin and that they couldn't take her away from her. Charles explained that he sympathized, but as a police officer, he had to enforce the directive from Child Services, and it wasn't his decision to make. To clarify, if Justin had wanted primary physical custody of Ayla, he would have needed to either reach an agreement with her mother or go through a court process to get a judge's approval. However, as we saw in the custody exchange, there was no agreement or court involvement. Instead, a Child Protective Services supervisor made a judgment, but failed to consider the mother's own arrangements for the child to stay with her relatives during her temporary absence. Before a court grants a parent exclusive physical custody, they typically evaluate the situation thoroughly, including background checks and home visits, which did not happen in Ayla's case. In custody cases, the child's best interest should always come first. However, there was reportedly no evidence to support the decision that was made. Many analysts believe that only an imminent danger to the child's safety could outweigh the stability and continuity of staying with her maternal relatives. If Child Protective Services officials believed Ayla was at risk, it's unclear why they only removed Ayla and not her little brother Raymond as well. The father took Ayla to his childhood home in Waterville, where he lived with his mother Phoebe, 47, his sister Alicia, 24, and her baby daughter Gabriella, who like Ayla was an infant at the time. Justin, 25, lived in the partially finished basement, a single large room, while the rest of the family occupied the upstairs area. During Trista's rehabilitation, she called Justin every day to speak with Ayla and ensure everything was going smoothly. She did not perceive any warning signs during these conversations. On October 20th, 2011, coinciding with the 8th day of Trista's treatment, a meeting was held to discuss Ayla's case. Attendees included Child Protective Services members, 2 doctors, Trista, her sister Jessica, and their lawyer, as well as Justin, who participated via phone. This meeting resulted in an agreement that Ayla would be returned to her mother on October 22, 2011, upon Trista's completion of the addiction recovery program. It was also agreed that Justin would bring Ayla to the treatment center for a visit on the 21st. Things were going well for Trista, but the situation was about to take a turn. None of the established agreements were fulfilled, leaving Trista desperate to regain custody of her daughter. She repeatedly reached out to Child Protective Services for assistance in enforcing the agreement, but to no avail. As a result, Trista sought a temporary compromise with Justin. He would continue to care for the child, and she would receive regular visitation rights. On November 12, 2011, Justin took the girl to the emergency room. Following a thorough examination, doctors diagnosed a broken bone in one of her joints, specifically the elbow joint that connects the upper arm to the elbow. Justin claimed the accident had occurred the previous night, on November 11th, stating that he slipped and fell on her while holding Ayla on the porch during a rainstorm. According to him, although she cried, there were no visible injuries, and it wasn't until the next morning that it became apparent she required urgent medical attention. By the next Monday, the orthopedist concluded that surgery would not be necessary, and the injury would likely heal on its own. A week later, on November 26th, the specialist reported during the third medical appointment that the child's progress was as expected. Trista attended this medical consultation to closely monitor her daughter's recovery, unaware that it would be the last time she would hold her in her arms. From that point on, the situation quickly deteriorated. Frustrated by the ongoing disputes over custody, visitation rights, and even her right to talk to her daughter on the phone, Trista decided to take action. On December 15, 2011, she filed court papers to initiate legal proceedings to gain full physical custody of Ayla. On Saturday, December 17th, 2 days later, Justin contacted the police in the morning to report that Ayla was missing from his mother's house, where he was living with his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and his sister Alicia. According to him, they had put the 20-month-old girl to bed the previous night, and when they woke up early that morning, she was no longer there. Trista was on her way to visit her boyfriend Raymond in a coastal city in Maine, just 50 miles from the Canadian border, when she received devastating news. She was dozing in the passenger seat while her father-in-law, Robert, drove. Robert took a call from Trista's father, who informed him that Trista's baby, Ayla, was missing. The news left Robert frozen, and he searched for a safe place to stop the car and wake Trista. Groggy, Trista listened as her father's voice came through the phone, informing her that her baby's whereabouts were unknown. Desperate, Trista changed course, heading to meet the police who were searching for Ayla. The 90-minute journey felt like an eternity to Trista, who frantically called Justin to find out what had happened, but her calls went unanswered, leaving her terrified. When they arrived at the police station, both Trista and Robert gave statements to the authorities. About 30 minutes later, Trista's father joined them, visibly angry and distressed. It turned out that Justin had called 911 that morning at 8:49 to report Ayla's disappearance. He claimed the last time someone saw Ayla was around 10 p.m. the previous night, when his sister Alicia checked on her before bed. However, on Saturday morning, they discovered Ayla was no longer in her crib, but Justin didn't specify the exact time of her disappearance in the call. Justin suspected that an unknown intruder had kidnapped the toddler. The news of Ayla's disappearance spread rapidly, and the authorities quickly launched an investigation. The police chief addressed the media, assuring them that the case was being thoroughly investigated and that their primary objective was to find Ayla by any means. The police searched the house for any potential clues that could lead them to Ayla, facilitating their operation. Meanwhile, the family stayed with friends, and a command center was set up to coordinate the search efforts. On the third day, Monday, December 19th, the FBI was requested to assist in the search operation. By this point, 75 individuals from various agencies were involved in the efforts. The state police seized 2 vehicles from the Petro residence, a 1996 Ford Explorer, owned by Justin, and a 4-door silver sedan, owned by Justin's girlfriend Courtney, who was present on the night of Ayla's disappearance. The search for Ayla expanded, with the FBI's child abduction team conducting door-to-door interviews. 75 officers worked tirelessly, investing 5,000 hours in 10 days, pursuing 330 leads. 50 civilian volunteers and a $30,000 reward aided the effort. Justin initially kept a low profile, avoiding media. However, he made more public appearances, including on the Today's Show, where he addressed the shift in law enforcement's message. He appealed to the perpetrator to return Ayla, emphasizing they had no right to keep her, and she needed to be with her family at home. Justin attributed his delayed cooperation to his initial naivety, having expected Ayla to return within a few weeks. He also stated that law enforcement had advised him to avoid the press, which was partially confirmed by the Department of Public Safety spokesperson. However, the spokesperson clarified that this guidance was only provided at the beginning of the investigation. Subsequently, the police actually encouraged Ayla's parents to remain in the public eye. Justin took the opportunity to respond to the insinuations against him, inviting the TV host to spend a day with him to gain first-hand experience of his situation. While he praised the police's efforts, he acknowledged that some of their methods were unpleasant. He emphasized that the truth remains the same, regardless of how many times he was asked the same questions and accused of lying, believing that the truth will eventually emerge. By the end of January, police discovered Ayla's blood in several areas of the DPO house and announced their findings. Although there was not enough evidence to make arrests, 3 adults, including Justin, Courtney, and Elisha, who lived in the residence where Ayla was last seen, were suspects. According to Stephen McCausland, spokesperson for the Department of Public Safety, the forensic evidence contradicted the family's story of what happened, making it highly unlikely that someone could have taken Ayla from her bedroom without one of the 3 adults in the house noticing. 6 months after Ayla's disappearance was reported on May 30th, 2012, the police announced that it was unlikely the little girl was still alive. Trista's family invited journalists into their home to watch the press conference where this news was delivered. Trista broke down in tears, and her grief soon turned to anger as she accused Justin of killing her baby. For Trista's family, learning the details of forensic tests conducted at Justin's family's house was extremely difficult. They already knew that Ayla's blood had been found, and they had been told the amount was equivalent to 25% of her blood volume. However, they had not seen the evidence until January 2013, when everything was finally revealed to them. The investigation uncovered disturbing evidence. The baby seat in Justin's 1996 Ford Explorer had Ayla's blood on the left shoulder strap. Dried gastric fluid was found on the back seats. In Ayla's bedroom, blood was discovered on her princess pink sneakers next to her crib, as well as on the face and arms of her doll. Investigators believed Ayla might have tried to wipe blood from her mouth with her toy. Additionally, a blood stain was found on the living room sofa. Most of the blood traces were found in the basement. On the mattress where Justin slept with Courtney, a pool of Ayla's blood was discovered. Nearby on the bed, vomit and an unidentified pink fiber, possibly from a toy, were found next to the sneakers stained with Ayla's blood on the tongue and inside. Additionally, splashes of blood were found on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls, with some of the splashes on the walls matching Ayla's height. An expert concluded that some of the blood drops, about the size of a dime, were indicative of trauma caused by a blunt object. The experts also determined that some blood spatter patterns in the house might have been coughed up by Ayla, suggesting that she had both internal and external injuries. The police found that bed linens had been used to clean up Ayla's blood. This information was horrific for Trista and her family to learn, and they soon discovered even more disturbing details. Officers warned Trista about disturbing evidence, then showed her luminol test results revealing hidden bloodstains at her house. She was devastated, fled the station in panic, and became convinced Ayla was murdered, declining to see more evidence. Justin showed no emotion when police showed him and the Petro family evidence months prior. The family they stayed with during the relocation also declined to see photos, citing disinterest. Justin's girlfriend, who was with him the night Ayla disappeared, had the same indifferent reaction to the findings. Trista spoke out 8 months after the 2013 ordeal, slam-dunking Justin, Elisha, and Courtney for being free and unbothered. In a blistering letter, she shared evidence and photos, refusing to wait for justice, vowing to revive public interest with or without law enforcement's backing. In 2016, journalists visited Justin's mom's house, meeting Alicia, Ayla's aunt. Queried about blood evidence, Alicia blamed Ayla's lactose intolerance, citing vomiting. However, internet research showed this was unlikely, as typical symptoms are gas, bloating, and diarrhea, not vomiting blood. In 2017, a judge granted Trista's request and formally declared Ayla legally deceased. The ruling stated that Ayla's death likely occurred on or around December 17, 2011, the day her father, Justin, reported her missing. With this ruling in place, Trista and her legal team pursued a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin, alleging that his intentional and unlawful actions led to Ayla's death, and that he subjected her to pain, terror, and physical harm prior to her passing. Trista held a press conference, confronting her deceased daughter's father after he denied wrongdoing in a lawsuit. She questioned his conscience, saying she saw the truth in his eyes and believed he knew it was a problem. In 2023, a judge granted Trista's request to add Phoebe and Elisha as defendants in the wrongful death lawsuit. The three defendants now face civil charges for wrongful death, conscious pain and suffering, and unlawfully interfering with a deceased person's body. Additionally, Justin is charged with breaching his parental duty to care for a minor child. Trista and her lawyer knew they wouldn't get money from Justin. They wanted to uncover the truth about Ayla's disappearance. It was suspicious, with Justin driving to Portland and back, claiming to search for Ayla, but never contacting Trista or her family. He had bought a $25,000 life insurance policy for Ayla weeks before. It's bizarre that Justin stayed at a friend's house while detectives investigated Ayla's disappearance. This is especially surprising, given that Justin had barely been involved in his baby's life during the 9 months of pregnancy, and most of her life. Trista also shared that she received strange messages from Justin in the week after he took Ayla, in which he expressed fear that someone might kidnap or snatch her. He had made similar comments around December 11th, 6 days before her disappearance was reported. However, after Ayla went missing, those messages took on a threatening and confusing tone. Trista admitted that she had always been perplexed by their meaning. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Mani. Shannon Mani was born on April 6, 1997, to Anshumani and Vijay Mani. When she was a small child, her parents immigrated to the United States from Fiji. The family settled in Waukesha, a small town in southeastern Wisconsin, where Shannon grew up and attended school. She was intelligent, attractive, and very outgoing. Her parents believed Waukesha was the perfect place to raise their children. After completing high school in 2015, Shannon enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. She was passionate about helping others and aspired to become a social worker. Despite her busy schedule, Shannon worked with her father at an organic food company. It was at work that she met Quentin Neal, 26, who was applying for a similar position. Quentin had a strong desire to make a positive impact on people's lives. Shannon shared a similar passion, dreaming of building a shelter for women and children, while Quentin wanted to create a safe haven for his community. With their similar interests and outlook on life, Shannon and Quentin quickly formed a close bond. As their friendship blossomed into romance, Shannon was overjoyed to have met Quentin, and soon they started living together. Quentin showed genuine care for Shannon, and she ensured their relationship remained happy. They began making plans for their future together. However, their lives took a drastic turn when Shannon vanished without a trace. On April 13, 2018, Shannon failed to pick up her younger brother from school and didn't show up to work. Her phone was switched off, and she hadn't informed anyone about her absence from work. Concerned, her parents went to the police station, unable to locate their daughter. Initially, detectives suspected that Shannon, being young, might have run away or gone off with friends. But her parents disagreed, knowing their daughter well. She wasn't the type to simply switch off her phone and abandon her family, leaving them worried and searching for her. Shannon's mother shared crucial details with investigators, prompting them to take the case more seriously. Shannon was 4 months pregnant when she vanished, which raised concerns since pregnant women rarely disappear without something bad happening to them. Furthermore, some of her belongings, including money and important documents, were still in her room, which was another alarming indication. Shannon's parents told investigators that the father of her child was 27-year-old Quentin Neal. However, when Quentin was contacted by phone, he claimed to have no knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts. According to Quentin, Shannon had been living with her parents, and he hadn't seen her at all that day. The investigators called Quentin again, asking him to come to the police station to answer some questions. Quentin appeared anxious, promising to arrive at the station immediately. When Shannon's parents were still present, Quentin told the investigators that the last time he had seen her was over 24 hours ago, when she left his house to pick up her little brother from school. They had only exchanged a few text messages since then, and had not been in contact again. The investigators asked Quentin if he had any idea where Shannon might be, but he was unable to provide one. According to Quentin, Shannon's life revolved around school and work, and she had always been in touch with her loved ones until that day. However, Quentin recalled that there was another guy who had shown interest in Shannon. Despite knowing she was in a relationship and pregnant, this guy had relentlessly pursued Shannon's affection, even after she asked him to leave her alone. The investigators instantly considered this guy a person of possible concern, as jealousy often leads to reckless behavior. The next day, police began questioning Shannon's friends to gather new information. They distributed details of the search for the young pregnant woman to all police stations in Wisconsin the same day. The first disturbing discovery was made. Shannon's car was found in Milwaukee, about 20 minutes from her home. Forensic experts carefully examined the vehicle inside and out, but found no suspicious signs. There was no evidence of carjacking, struggle, or any other crime. However, Shannon's purse and cell phone were missing from the car. 3 sets of fingerprints were found on the vehicle, including Shannon's and Quentin's. The origin of the third set remained unknown, and the police had to identify the person who left them. That same afternoon, the man mentioned by Quentin was questioned by investigators. Although he claimed to be upset about Shannon's disappearance, he denied Quentin's allegations, stating that he and Shannon were just friends and that he had never pursued a romantic relationship with her. When pressed further, he admitted to confessing his love to Shannon in the past, but she had rejected him, saying they could only be friends. Since then, he had not attempted to win her affection. The guy's fingerprints were found to match those in Shannon's car. However, he explained that he often got rides from Shannon to university, which is why his prints were in her car. He also claimed to have been 100 miles away from Waukesha, attending a baseball game when Shannon went missing. The investigators checked and confirmed his alibi, ruling him out as a suspect. The case got a surprising and crucial break when Shannon's mother, Ann Shumani, found her daughter's Apple Watch and checked her recent text messages. She took the watch to the police station, handing it over to investigators. Reviewing Shannon's texts, they made a significant discovery. Despite Quentin's claim that he hadn't met Shannon on the day she vanished, the texts showed they had arranged to meet up that day. This meant Quentin had lied to the investigators and Shannon's parents, making him the prime suspect. While examining Shannon's watch messages, investigators uncovered cracks in her relationship with Quentin. They found texts revealing Quentin's abusive behavior towards the pregnant mother. This revelation shocked Shannon, who had been unaware of her lover's true nature. Quentin apologized profusely, begging her not to leave him. Shannon proposed they take a break from each other. The investigators' suspicions grew, fueled by Quentin's troubled past. He had a criminal record, having recently been released from prison after serving time for robbery. He had multiple arrests for assault and other misdemeanors. Shannon's parents had also grown wary of Quentin, noticing their daughter's persistent depression. Moreover, Quentin exhibited emotional instability regarding the unborn baby, further solidifying the investigators' doubts about his character. After Shannon informed her parents about her pregnancy, they arranged a meeting with Quentin, during which he assured them that he would take care of both Shannon and the baby, claiming he had always wanted to have children. However, a few days later, according to Anshamani, Quentin sent Shannon some disturbing texts, contradicting his earlier promise and stating that he didn't want the baby. He even suggested that Shannon should consider having an abortion. The police attempted to track Shannon's cell phone and discovered it was last active in the afternoon of April 13th, near Quentin's residence. Shannon's mother noticed severe bruising on her arms and inquired about the cause. Shannon broke down in tears and revealed that Quentin had physically assaulted her, punching her with his fists while she was in her vehicle. Despite her parents' warnings to end the relationship, Shannon eventually forgave Quentin and resumed dating him. With this concerning information, investigators grew increasingly worried that they might not find Shannon alive, prompting them to obtain a search warrant and rush to Quentin's house. At first, the crime scene did not appear to show any signs of a struggle or disturbance. The area was clean, with no broken furniture or objects. Forensic experts sprayed the first floor with luminol, a chemical that detects blood, but found no evidence. However, when they applied the same test to the basement, the walls and floor glowed, indicating the presence of blood. The numerous marks found at the scene strongly suggested that Shannon was likely no longer alive. Quentin Neal was arrested and taken into custody. Before questioning him, investigators reviewed the contents of his phone and discovered that he had recently searched online for ways to remove evidence of a crime using a lye chemical. This suggested that he was planning to hide traces of his crime. During the interrogation, Quentin initially denied any knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts and claimed to have no connection to her disappearance. However, faced with solid evidence, he began to alter his story. Eventually, he agreed to confess to everything. Quentin claimed to have acted in self-defense when he took Shannon's life. He told investigators that Shannon had visited his house to discuss their future and their child. But the conversation escalated into an argument. According to Quentin, Shannon then entered the kitchen, grabbed a knife and a gun that were being kept for emergencies, and began threatening him. Quentin said he felt compelled to act quickly to protect himself, leading to a physical struggle that ended in Shannon's death. Quentin reiterated to the investigators that he had acted in self-defense, but they were skeptical due to the lack of defensive wounds on his body. Despite their doubts, they continued to listen to his account. Quentin said that, realizing the gravity of his actions, he panicked in the basement where the incident occurred. In an attempt to conceal the evidence, he used a large suitcase to hide the body. Quentin Neal led the police to a storage unit 6 miles from his home, where he had stashed a suitcase containing Shannon's body. When detectives opened the suitcase, they found Shannon's lifeless body, her wrists and ankles bound with duct tape, contradicting Quentin's claim of self-defense. Forensic examination revealed Shannon died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head and had additional knife wounds on her body. Shannon's parents were devastated when detectives informed them of the discovery of their daughter's body on April 18, 2018. Quentin Neal was subsequently indicted for the murders of Shannon Manny and her unborn child. The evidence gathered, including their correspondence from the day of her death, was sufficient for the court to reach a guilty verdict. The dispute had begun when Shannon visited Quentin's home to discuss her pregnancy, but she never left his house alive. The trial of Quentin Neal, accused of killing Shannon, was set to begin in the spring of 2019. However, Just days before the trial, anonymous letters were sent to attorneys and court officials, claiming that someone else was responsible for Shannon's death. The letters were later deemed irrelevant after the author, a friend of Quentin's, was identified and found to be trying to confuse the investigation and help Quentin. Quentin faced the death penalty, but denied the charges and claimed he acted self-defense. 15 months had passed since Shannon's death, and her family waited anxiously for justice, trying to stay positive. Shannon's mother, Anne Shamani, worked hard to keep her daughter's memory alive and not lose hope. Shannon had been passionate about supporting women and children affected by domestic violence, and her family had planned to build a shelter in her honor. However, that dream was never realized, as Shannon herself became a victim of violence. On July 15, 2019, Quentin Neal reached a plea deal with investigators, admitting guilt in the deaths of Shannon and her child. As part of the deal, prosecutors dropped the death penalty. 2 days later, on July 17, 2019, the Milwaukee County Circuit Court sentenced the 28-year-old to 2 concurrent life sentences without parole eligibility, ensuring he will spend the rest of his life in prison. At his sentencing, Neal remained silent, failing to explain his motive for the crime. Shannon's mother, Anne Shamani, expressed relief that justice had been served, noting that the only silver lining was that Neal would no longer harm anyone else. The family plans to keep Shannon's memory alive by opening a shelter in her honor. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kirti Vyas. Kirti Vyas, a 28-year-old resident of Mumbai, lived with her family in a Bharatnagar residence on Grand Road. After completing her education, she worked in the finance department at a famous beauty salon in Andheri West, Mumbai. On March 16, 2018, Kirti followed her daily routine, leaving her house at 7 a.m. to head to the office. Her 2 friends were already waiting for her in their car, and together they drove to work. However, Kirti failed to return home that evening, and her family was unable to contact her as her phone was switched off. Concerned, they reported her disappearance to the police. Despite an extensive 50-day search, there was no trace of Kirti. It wasn't until the police conducted a thorough investigation that they found a crucial clue, a drop of blood, which ultimately led them to uncover the truth behind her disappearance. Kirti's family members were busy with their tasks when, around 11:30 a.m., her mother tried to contact her to ask for the Wi-Fi password at home. However, she couldn't reach Kirti because both of her mobile phones were switched off. Assuming Kirti was busy at work, her mother thought she had turned off her phones and focused on her own tasks. Later that evening, Kirti's family grew worried when she didn't come home on time. They called her office and were surprised to learn that Kirti hadn't come to work that day and her phone was consistently switched off. Distressed, they contacted Kirti's close friends, who said they had last spoken to her the previous night. The family then began searching for Kirti in the vicinity, but despite their efforts, her whereabouts remained unknown. The entire night passes, but Kirti fails to return home. The following day, overcome with exhaustion and defeat, Kirti's family files a report of her disappearance at the DB Road police station. After registering the case, the police investigation team visits Kirti's office to gather information about her. They also question her friends. During the interrogation, 2 of Kirti's friends, Tamna and Kushi Sahajwani, informed the police that they dropped Kirti at Grand Road Station on the day she went missing, as per her request, while they were driving her to the office. To verify their statements, the police examined the CCTV footage outside Kirti's house. The footage clearly shows Kirti leaving her house around 9 a.m. on the morning of March 16, 2018. Tamna and Kushi Sahani were already waiting with their car, and Kirti gets in. They then drive away. Since this was the last time Kirti was seen with her friends, the police asked Tamna and Kushi Sahani to join the investigation team and provide any information they have about Kirti. no matter how small, and details about the events of March 16, 2018. The 28-year-old finance manager, Kirti, has disappeared, and the Mumbai police have yet to uncover any clues about her whereabouts. She was last spotted outside her building, getting into an SUV owned by her colleague. According to her colleague, he dropped her off at Lamington Road. As Kirti was last seen with Siddesh and Kushi, the police initially suspected their involvement in her disappearance. Both have been cooperative with the authorities, assisting in the investigation. Despite days of scrutiny, the police have found no evidence to implicate them. In fact, Siddesh and Kushi have even launched social media campaigns on Facebook and Twitter to help locate Kirti. As a result, the police have cleared them of any suspicion. However, the police are still faced with a daunting task of finding Kirti, whose disappearance remains a mystery. The crime branch had already verified CCTV footage outside Kirti's home, which confirmed that Siddesh and Kushi gave Kirti a lift in their car heading towards the office. However, they claimed to have dropped Kirti near Grand Road Station, but the CCTV footage around that area had not been checked earlier. The crime branch then immediately began scrutinizing the CCTV footage around the station. Additionally, they investigated the CCTV footage from Siddesh Tamana and Kushi Sahajwani's car. A surprising revelation emerged. Neither Kushi, Siddesh, nor Kirti appeared in any CCTV footage around or at the station. Moreover, the CCTV in Siddesh Tamana's car did not confirm that they went towards the station on March 16, 2018. When questioned by the crime branch, Siddesh and Kushi initially claimed to have dropped Kirti at Grand Road Station, but the CCTV evidence contradicted their statement. Later, they changed their story, saying that Kirti had initially asked to be dropped at the station, but then requested to get down near Navjivan Society, which is why they did not reach the station. The prime suspects had repeatedly changed their statements, arousing the policeman's suspicion. As a result, they kept a close eye on both of them. In addition to this, their phone records were checked, but nothing suspicious was found. Consequently, both individuals remained at large for nearly 50 days. Despite Kirti's disappearance without a trace, it seemed as though there would be no leads on their whereabouts. However, the police received a forensic report that completely altered the course of the case. It was discovered that when Kushi, Siddesh, and Kirti were last seen leaving the office on March 16, 2018, the police had immediately sent the car they used for forensic examination. The forensic lab's report revealed that a drop of blood was found in the car's trunk. After subjecting this drop of blood to a DNA test and matching it with a sample from Kirti's parents, it was confirmed that the blood found in the car belonged to Kirti. The presence of Kirti's blood in the car was now revealing a lot. After this revelation, the police take Siddesh Tamana and Kushi Sahajwani into custody again and begin a rigorous interrogation. Both of them initially claim that they dropped Kirti off on the way and do not know her whereabouts. However, when the police confront them about a drop of Kirti's blood found in the car's trunk, they are unable to provide a clear explanation. Under intense questioning, they eventually crack and start revealing the truth. The truth is shocking. It emerges that KY worked as a finance manager at B. Blunt Salon, while Kushi Sahajwani was Kirti's junior, and Siddesh Tamana worked as an account executive. Siddesh Tamana had been employed at the salon for a long time, with decent performance, but had been failing to meet his targets for the past few months, accompanied by continuous errors in his work. As a result, Kirti issues a notice to Siddesh Tamana, warning him to either improve his performance by March 16, 2018, or face termination. In this notice, Siddesh Tamana, 28, informs his colleague, 42-year-old Kushi Sahajwani, who works with him. Unbeknownst to others, a romantic relationship had developed between Kushi and Siddesh at the office, despite Kushi being already married. When Kirti issued the notice to Siddesh, Kushi became fearful that she would also lose her job, since Siddesh had failed to improve his performance in March. In response, Kushi and Sidhesh concoct a sinister plan. They call Kirti and ask her to meet them at the office, and instead of taking the train, Kirti gets into their EOS sports car. En route, they demand that Kirti not terminate Sidhesh's employment, but Kirti responds that the decision would be made at the office meeting. When they don't get their way, the two start physically fighting with Kirti inside the car. During the struggle, Sidhesh and Kushi use a scarf to strangle Kirti, keeping her restrained for an extended period, ultimately resulting in her death inside the car. After Kirti's death, the two concoct a plan to discreetly dispose of the body, making it seem like nothing is amiss. They install a sunroof in the car, placing Kirti's body inside, and then head to the office. Upon their return, they drive the car to a secluded area, where they dismember Kirti's body into 3 pieces, all within the vehicle. They subsequently dispose of the pieces in different locations. After securing the evidence, they visit a nearby car wash to thoroughly clean their vehicle, inside and out. From there, they proceed to Kirti's house, where they join forces with her family to stage a search effort, thereby avoiding suspicion. Sidhesh and Kushi even launch an online campaign to find Kirti and personally visit the police, ensuring that no doubts are raised. Despite their confidence in evading detection, their luck takes a dramatic turn when the car cleaner's negligence leaves behind a trace of Kirti's blood in the trunk, ultimately exposing the entire incident. Following the full disclosure, Sidhesh Tamanar and Kushi Sahajwani are charged with severe offenses, including kidnapping, misleading the police, destroying evidence, and murder. They are subsequently arrested and imprisoned. Currently, regarding the status of this case, Kushi Sahajwani has been released on bail, while Sidhesh Tamanar remains behind bars. The police have yet to recover Kirti's remains. As the Mumbai crime branch continues to search for the body of 28-year-old Kirti Vas, who was murdered on March 16th, they suspect that the body might have been dumped in the area. The search operation is ongoing.